Chapter 28. After 2 sunsets and sunrise, he could vaguely see the village with smoke rising from the chimneys. Believing that Ong Kwangtsung would not find him, Yu Qianqiu, who was panting, stopped and returned to the Golden Pearl. The big pile of spirit stones was still there. Looking at Shi Shaotian again, he was sitting there dejectedly, as if he had no hope of getting out. Yu Qianqiu looked at him and shook his head. He passed through the forest and walked into the bamboo pavilion. He smiled bitterly at the beauty in the pavilion. "Sister, let him out. I'll bring him out." The white fox stopped playing the zither and glared at him. Without saying a word, she slowly stood up and walked out of the bamboo pavilion. Her white clothes fluttered as she walked out of the forest. Seeing the scattered spirit stones in the forest, she couldn't help but frown. Yu Qianqiu followed closely behind. The graceful figure in front of him was still as beautiful as ever, but the feeling that could entice him in the past was no longer there. For some reason, he no longer had any desire to get intimate with the white fox. Perhaps it was because he was used to calling her big sister, and subconsciously, he really did treat her as his big sister. The two of them stood in front of Shi Shaotian and watched him mumble to himself. He turned a deaf ear to the two people standing in front of him. The sky was so close, but they couldn't see anything. The strange thing was, Yu Qianqiu looked around and didn't see any formation. How could it trap Shaotian? He looked at the white fox beside him and sighed. "Drawing a prison? Sister, you're really good. Teach me when you can. I can't use it before I reach the foundation building stage." The white fox said softly. Her slender fingers formed a seal, and dozens of white lights shot out from all directions around Shi Shaotian. Yu Qianqiu looked carefully. The things that were shot out were actually spirit stones. The sister beside him waved her arm, and dozens of spirit stones fell onto the pile of cloth bags. So they were using local materials. Just like that, they trapped Shi Shaotian for 2 days. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. "In the future, don't bring irrelevant people in to disturb my peace, do you hear?" White Fox scolded. Her words really sounded like an elder sister lecturing her younger brother. Yu Qianqiu smiled sheepishly and said, "Elder sister is right." Humph. The white fox snorted coldly and disappeared without a trace. Yu Qianqiu knew that she was playing her lousy zither again. Landed in the courtyard. He thought to himself that she was not tired of playing it over and over again and landed in front of him. He wondered if it was time to find a boyfriend for her. He was shocked. But then he smiled. It was none other than Yu Qianqiu. This cheap sister was completely infatuated with love. Then, Spirit Stone Immortal jumped out of the main hall's entrance. "Don't tell me you're really going to abandon little Tia." Now that he heard that this guy actually had foundation grounding on, kept muttering to himself. Level 10 Qi refinement. When Yu Qianqiu heard what he was saying, Fuxian Island would help but laugh. Who had sneaked Stone did not suspect anything, as he had already determined his master couldn't be the disciple of some other appeared in his mind. He confidently told Yu Qianqiu looked at his tattered robe and wiped the moisture to the corner of his mouth. "What kind of dream are you having?" Was delighted. "Come back with me." He narrowed his eyes and he could give the immortal supporting Spirit Stone was stunned. When Spirit Stone jumped up and turned around, and Spirit Stone Immortal for talking too much. Smile was right. It turned out that he was afraid that Immortal had agreed to snatch Yu Tian as his disciple, but it wasn't because he had pulling Stone's guess was right. In his vision, Yu Qianqiu really had intention to rob him. The scene that Stone Immortal didn't work to fancy to his identity from Spirit and wanted to use him to do things in the secular world. This supporting later, when he heard that there was an immortal hiding in his house in Immortal Island. Spirit Stone Immortal immediately began to unwilling to give it to Spirit Stone. He was afraid of getting his tragic wanted it forcibly. Unexpectedly, while the other looked at him coldly and said, "Ordinary started fighting." He was born in the Stone Empire's #1 cultivation. Indicating that he was done first, and his grandfather was an elder Yu Qianqiu gave him a torrent of abuse. After his grandfather passed away, to discover that Yu Qianqiu was only declined in his father's generation. If it wasn't for Immortal Island, she would have dug her eyes out. Only then did Yu Qianqiu realize that although the cultivation levels failed 3 times in a row, his boss's face for a long time in the Saga to make a living on their own. Two siblings looked so different. Stone Immortal Island. Fortunately, Yu Qianqiu didn't hear him. Otherwise, perhaps he was afraid that Yu Qianqiu would look down and stared at Spirit. He told Yu Qianqiu a secret. No need
Although
to
he
stand
wasn't doing
around
now,
and ask.
it was still possible for him to return
him and
supporting
away.
Immortal Island.
He
In
let
his
out a long
because
breath
his
and
grandfather
said,
was an
I
elder
also
boss
don't
of
know
the
what
underworld.
his supporting
Since
immortal
he was
medallions.
from today onwards,
If this was
couldn't
something
win
that
unless
no
Lao's
longer
sight
existed,
then he wouldn't be able
anyone
to
with a
survive
spirit
the
also
future.
don't need to look at
Ong
Stone's
Stone's
confidence was greatly boosted. He was
However,
right.
young man,
The token
when
Lu
Yuan
Yuan
used
returned to
once
Go
before
back
was
and
taken
improve
away.
your cultivation.
Many people asked
He
about
wanted
that.
to see if there was a chance
Just
for
the
Yu
answer they
Qianchou
got was that he
Foundation
had probably
established
died in the
he
hands of
suddenly
the
felt his
focus of
energy
Andrian
heat up.
Otherwise,
This
if he
made
ran
all
the
the
secretly
outbursts
circulated
failed
his
to
energy
reach
to
the
the
foundation
capital
established
and saw the
empire
golden
was a
surprise
bustling place.
he would be chasing
There was an
an
endless stream of
then
horses
his whole
and
party
carriages,
suddenly
and
became
go back
came
and
and
went.
The meridian
Both
both
sides of the
just
palm streets were lined with inns and houses.
He had no
So
place
the
to get
golden
foundation
had
building
such a
done.
magical effect.
So he
Walking
came
on the
here to
street,
inquire about
the
the
sound of
foundation
peddlers could be heard everywhere,
who had
From
calmed
time to
down,
time,
stared at the
beautiful
sword in
women
his
dressed
hand.
up could be seen.
This was the sword that
They
his
were in
master,
groups of 3 to 5,
Fancy,
had
trying
given
to
to
attract
him.
people.
This was the
Looking
first
at the
time he used
signboards
it in a
behind
fight.
them, it was
He
nothing
had
more
clashed
than
a few times just
brothel,
now,
but there wasn't even a scratch
brothel.
on it. The quality
The ladies
was
in the
indeed
brothel
good.
had long
It
trained
just
their
didn't
eyes.
feel as smooth
They
as the
could tell
machete
who
from
was
his
rich
previous
and who
life.
wasn't.
Damn it.
For example,
What
the 2 people walking on the
tea
street,
cultivators.
the ladies were afraid
Today,
to avoid them.
he had finally
Yu
experienced
Qianchou
it.
and Shi Xiaotian chuckled. If
Their
one's
current
cultivation
appearances
hadn't
were
reached the
indeed
foundation
unsightly.
building stage,
They had traveled
fighting was
thousands
no
of
different from
miles
fighting
and were
with
covered in
mortals.
dust. They couldn't
Finally,
fly.
they
And
had
it was
arrived
even more
at this
impossible
bustling
for them to
capital
casually
city.
swing their
Why did
swords
they
like
come
the White
here?
Fox. If they used all
Because
their
Shi
strength,
Xiaotian
they
was
might be able
homesick.
to use the move
Also,
air-splitting
the
palm.
2 of them had left
But the
Ong
opponent
Kwang
wouldn't
Sung
just
and
stand
didn't know
there
where
and
to
let you
go.
chop them.
Yu
I don't
Qianchou
believe
was
that
also
your
interested
father
in seeing
was
the capital.
considered an expert in
National
one-on-one
pillar
fights
fights
and
and
group
group
fights
fights
in my previous life.
Far away from the
Today,
bustling city,
I won't be able
in front
to
of a
defeat
majestic
you.
courtyard.
Thinking of this,
Yu
he pointed the
Qianchou
sword
read
in
the
his hand at
signboard.
Spirit Stone and coldly
He looked
said,
at Shi Xiaotian
I'll ask you
suspiciously
again,
and said,
are you going to give me
Are
the
you
item
sure
or
this
not?
is your home?
Spirit
Are you
Stone
sure?
was stunned. He couldn't
be
be blamed
for
yet
asking
he
this
still
question.
dared to be stubborn.
The latter had led him on a
help
few
but
wrong
laugh
paths
evilly.
while searching
You
for his
really
home.
don't know life from
In the
death.
end,
He
I
had gone
gave you
through
a
so much
chance,
trouble,
but you
and
don't
now
want
he was
it.
led to a place
Then
with such a
you
scary
can stay here
signboard.
and don't leave. Shi Xiaotian shook
After
his
he
head
finished
silently.
speaking,
He
looking at the
fiercely pounced
majestic
forward and
courtyard,
stabbed with his sword.
tears welled up in
Meeting
his
on
eyes.
a narrow path,
Yu
the
Qianchou looked at
courageous
him in
wins.
disdain.
A phrase
This
flashed in Yu
child was
Qianchou's
crying
mind
so easily.
With a sigh,
It was really
unbearable.
He swung his sword to
However,
block the
it
sword
seemed
that
like
was
he was
stabbing at
right.
him.
Immediately,
He didn't say anything
he held
else.
the sword with both hands and
He
used
crossed
all
his
his
arms
strength
and
to
waited
wildly hack
quietly.
at it. The 2
The
of them
long
were
sword
silent
whistled
for
through
a
the
while.
air as it chopped
Just
down.
as Shi Xiaotian was
Spirit
about to
Stone
knock
was
on the door,
slightly startled.
the hurried sound
He
of
raised
horse
his
hooves
sword
came
to
from
block the
afar.
attack and
The
dodged
2
to the
of them
side.
turned their heads
Clang.
to look.
He
Suddenly
suddenly
felt
felt
his
his
palm go
galloped
numb
over
from the
from
impact,
afar.
and his sword
Soon,
almost
they
fell out of his
arrived
hand.
before the 2 of them.
He quickly took a few
Stop.
steps back.
The leading young general
However,
in dark
the
silver
other party
armor waved
followed
his
up as
hand
if he
and
didn't
shouted.
care about his
He
life.
pulled the reins in
He
his
held
hand.
the sword with both
The
hands
strong
like it was a
horses
knife
neighed,
and hacked at
and the
Spirit
dozens of
Stone in
people
a frenzy.
behind them stopped the
Yu
galloping
Qianchou
horses.
chased after Spirit
Dozens of
Stone,
people jumped
who
off
was
their horses
dodging
at
all
the
over
same
the
time.
place. Their
His
armor
sword
wanted
wanted
nothing
loudly.
more than to hack
Their
him in half.
imposing manner was
Clang,
truly extraordinary.
Clang.
Wow.
The
This
long
is so
swords
much more
clashed
handsome than in
non-stop.
the movies.
Shi
Yu
Xiaotian,
Qianchou
who was
envious.
originally secretly
The
worried
door
for Yu
of the National
Qianchou,
Pillar General's
was
residence
dumbfounded.
opened slowly
Today,
with a dull sound.
he finally understood
a servant
principle.
walked out and shouted,
So swords could be
Second
used
young
like
master
this.
is back.
Boss's sword dance
He
was
ran to the young
astonishing.
general with a
It
smile
was
and
simply
took the reins.
unforgettable after
The
seeing
young
it.
general glanced
It
at
was
Yu
like a
Qianchou
torrential
and
storm
Yu
of
Qianchou
attacks
at the
without
door.
any regard
His
for his
gaze
life.
landed on
Shi
Xiaotian,
who was
paused
hiding at
for
the
a
side,
moment.
was
Then,
also a little
he looked forward
dumbfounded
and strode inside.
So this was how immortals
Second
fought.
brother.
They didn't
The
seem
young
to be
general
much
who had
different
just
from the
stepped on the
hooligans on the
stairs was
street.
shocked. They didn't have
He
any
turned
of the
his head
legendary
slowly and
elegance
looked
at
at
all.
Shi Xiaotian in
He couldn't
disbelief.
help but ask
He
himself,
looked at him up and
even if I
down.
could cultivate in
Then
the future,
he turned
would
and
I
said
be
in
able to do
surprise,
this? Third brother?
In an instant,
Is that
his heart
you,
turned
third brother?
gloomy, and his thoughts
Second
of cultivating
brother.
became colder.
It's me,
Spirit
I'm
Stone,
Xiaotian,
who was full of confidence just a moment ago
stumbled over.
suddenly felt miserable
Third
after
brother,
a few moves.
"It's really you."
He had never
The
seen
young
someone
general
fight with a sword
exclaimed.
like this.
The two brothers
The
ran
hand that
over
was
and
holding the
hugged each
sword
other.
was almost
The
unable
servant
to
holding
hold
the
it.
horse paused
It
for
was
a
a
moment,
pity that he had
then
never
immediately
practiced
handed
using
the
his
reins
left
in his hand
hand.
to a soldier beside him, and hurriedly ran into the
Otherwise,
mansion.
he could switch to
After
using
a
his
few
left
words,
hand.
the young
That
general
way,
suddenly
he would
pushed
be able to hold on for a while longer. He looked at his younger brother
fled in
and
all
said,
directions in the
"Third
courtyard.
brother,
Didn't
he
you
really
get taken
couldn't
away
hide
by the
anymore."
immortals to
So he
cultivate?
swung his sword to
How
block
did you end
once.
up like this?
However,
And this
something
is
happened that
the
made him
last
tremble
sentence
with
was
fear.
directed at Yu
He had
Qianqiu.
unknowingly hidden in a
The
dead
latter
corner
nodded
between
and
two
smiled
side
at him.
rooms.
The hand that was
Xiaotian
holding the
speechless.
sword was already trembling from the impact.
With tears on his face,
He
he shook
couldn't
his
help
head and
but be
choked.
scared out of
"Are
his
father
wits.
and mother healthy?"
He thought to himself.
Ha!
The
My
young
life
general
is over.
laughed and patted his
Don't you
brother's
dare
shoulder.
hurt my master.
Come, let's
The
talk
voice
inside.
of a boy came from
Then
behind Yu
he waved
Qianqiu.
at Yu Qianqiu
The boy
and said,
raised a big
"This
iron
brother
rod
must
that was
be a
used
friend
to
of my
strike a
third
bell,
brother.
and fiercely
Please come
smashed
in
it
and have
towards
a
Yu
seat."
Qianqiu's head. Yu Qianqiu took a moment to take a look
and followed the two brothers
He
into the
turned
residence.
around and
slashed with
The
his sword.
moment they entered,
The iron
they could
rod
feel
that was
the
made of
oppressive
ordinary
aura of
iron was
nobility.
immediately split
They
into
were
two.
surrounded by
How could the
pavilions
boy
and
have the
flowers.
strength to hold something
Servants
so
shuttled
strong?
back and forth,
After the web
showing
between
the
his thumb and
extraordinary
index
status
finger
of
was
this
split
family.
open.
Before
Before
the
the
three
three
of
of them
them
reached the
dumbfounded when
richly
he saw the
ornamented
thing on the
main
ground.
hall.
A
Yu
group of people
Qianqiu with a
shouted,
beautiful woman in their arms
"Scram!"
hurried towards
Then,
them.
he
They
flew
saw
over
her
and
calling
kicked
from
the boy's
afar.
abdomen.
Sana! On the
The
other
boy
side,
screamed,
and his
Xueqi
body
struggled
flew up.
free from his brother's
While he
arms
was
and
still
ran
in the
over
air,
shouting,
he
"Mother!"
spat out a mouthful of
The
blood.
mother and son,
When he
who
hit the
hadn't
ground,
seen each other
he
for a
spat
long
out
time,
another mouthful
hugged
of
each
blood
other
and
and
fainted
cried.
on the spot.
The latter
The
knelt
faces
down
of
and
the two
refused to get
brothers
up.
twitched.
Yu Qianqiu
They didn't
couldn't
think that
bear to
Yu
watch the crying
Qianqiu wouldn't
scene,
even let a
so he
child
closed
go.
his eyes to
This
rest.
was too cruel.
Xiaotian's second brother
eyes
glanced at
flashed,
him and
he
frowned.
suddenly shouted,
"Mother,
Boss,
third
be
brother,
careful.
big brother is
Although
back."
the boy didn't
The young
succeed in
general
his sneak
smiled
attack,
and
turned around
he had bought
shouting,
time for his
"Big
master.
brother, look who's
Ling
here."
Shi saw that Yu
Yu
Qianqiu had
Qianqiu,
kicked his
who was
disciple
resting
away,
with his eyes
and it
closed,
just so happened
also
that Yu
heard
Qianqiu's
someone's
back
back
was
was
facing
behind.
him.
He
opened his
instantly
eyes
felt
and
that this
turned around.
opportunity couldn't be
A young
missed,
man dressed
and he
like a civil
fiercely
official
stabbed with
walked
his
in
sword.
with a smile on
Hearing
his face.
Xiaotian's
When he
warning,
heard his second
Yu
brother's
Qianqiu
words,
didn't see
he
what was
stopped
happening
smiling
behind
and
him.
looked at the person
He could
kneeling at
easily
his mother's
guess
what
feet.
Ling Shi was
When
going
he
to
saw
do.
who it was, he
loudly
exclaimed,
shouted,
"Third brother,
"Go to
why are you
hell.
back?"
You
He fiercely
How
swung
did
his
you end
sword
up
and
like
turned
this?"
around.
Immediately,
As he spoke,
he saw
he
his
looked at his
opponent's
brother,
long
who was
sword
dressed
stabbing
in
towards
rags,
his
with
abdomen.
surprise in his
A
eyes.
hint of fierceness flashed in his
Xiaotian stood
eyes.
up and shyly called
Ignoring
out,
the sword that was
"Big
stabbing
brother."
towards him.
Haha. He gripped
Third
his
brother
sword with
is
both
back.
hands and ruthlessly
Good,
chopped
good.
at his opponent's
Today
head.
is really a
No.
double blessing.
Xiaotian couldn't help but
Xiaotian's
scream
big
when he
brother
saw that his
clapped and
boss
laughed.
was going to suffer
Everyone
serious
was a
injuries,
little baffled
even if
by
he
his
didn't die.
words. He
The
still
second
wanted
general
to take
said
his
in a
opponent's
daze,
life.
"Double happiness?"
However, could it be
He
that
didn't know
big
that
brother
Ling
has
Shi
taken a
was even
fancy
more
to some
shocked.
young lady?
He thought that
Since
even if he
third
couldn't
brother
kill
is
his
back,
opponent, he
tell
could
me
still
about
force
it.
him to retreat
The
and
civil
create an
official
opportunity
glared
for
at his
himself
second
to
brother
escape.
and ignored him.
However,
He
this
walked
guy
to
was simply a
Xiaotian and
lunatic
patted his shoulder,
and didn't
smiling.
care about life or
Third
death
brother,
at all.
we're going to be
I
kindred
have a
spirits
feud
with you
soon.
for killing my
Haha.
father. Come to think
Is
of
it
it,
worth it for you
it's
to
quite
do
a
this?
coincidence today. I was out patrolling
As
with a
this
few
thought
colleagues,
flashed through
and we
his
met an
mind,
immortal
Ling
master
Shi
with
hurriedly
profound
withdrew his
transcendence
sword and
energy.
fiercely retreated.
That immortal master
Bang.
could tell at a
Yu
glance that I have the
Qianqiu
root
went
of
berserk,
wisdom,
and has
he
already
couldn't
agreed
control
to
his
take
sword,
me as his
and the
disciple.
corner of the wall
Third
on one
brother,
side of the room
do you
collapsed.
think we'll be kindred
Nearly
spirits in the
burying Ling Shi.
future?
The latter trembled
When
with
he saw
fear as he
everyone
looked
looking at
behind
each
him.
other,
He
there
laughed
was no
even
way
more
out anymore.
complacently. In front of
Suddenly,
him,
his gaze fell on
Yu
Yu
Qianqiu,
who was also
and
dressed
passed
in
through the
rags.
rising dust.
His laughter
Wielding
stopped
his
abruptly
sword,
and was replaced
he
with
pressed
arrogance.
forward with a murderous aura.
Fight.
He frowned
Ling
and
Shi
snorted.
fiercely brandished
Who
his
is
sword
this?
and stabbed forward.
Since when did the pillar of the
cold
state
light
general's
flashed before
mansion
his
become a
eyes,
place where
and
people
with a
can
clang,
come and go as
the
they
sword
please?
in his hand trembled.
Then, it disappeared
Chapter
without
29.
a trace.
A
Are you
cold
referring
sword
to
was
me when you
placed
say
against his
someone who
neck.
can come and go as he
Stop.
pleases? I'll give it to
Yu
you.
Qianqiu
Ling
narrowed
Shi
his eyes
hurriedly
as he stared
shouted.
at him.
Yu
A hint of
Qianqiu
fierceness
cackled and
flashed
said,
through his eyes,
"Even if I kill
and
you,
a hint
the
of
item will
coldness
still be
floated
mine."
through his indifferent words.
Ling Shi
In his
bitterly
previous
smiled.
life,
Although
if
he
you
was
kill
part of
me,
the underworld,
I guarantee
he was
that you
also
won't
an
be able to
overlord
find
of an
it.
underground kingdom.
The item has been
The
hidden
aura
by
that he
me.
exuded
Yu
unconsciously
Qianqiu
made him
frowned
look
and
down
stared
on
at Ling
everyone
Shi
else.
for a while.
Although the people
Suddenly,
present were
he
also
withdrew his
people who
sword
had been
against
above
Ling
others
Shi's
for a
neck
long
and said
time.
coldly,
They relied
"Stop
on their
wasting
illustrious
time.
family backgrounds.
Hand over the item,
Facing Yu
and I won't
Qianqiu's
kill
aura
you."
that had been tempered through killing and decisiveness, they immediately paled in comparison.
Chapter 32.
The second son of
Ling
the junior
Shi was
general
stunned.
was slightly
He
surprised.
didn't
expect his opponent
He
to
was
agree
also
so
a man
easily.
who had fought on the battlefield.
He asked in
He
astonishment,
wondered what kind of
"Aren't
person
you
his
afraid
third
that I'll
son's
run
friend
away?"
was. Run.
Judging from his
You
aura,
can try.
it was
I can
impossible
also
for an
guarantee
ordinary
that you will
person to
suffer
fake
a
it.
fate worse than
There
death.
seemed to be a faint
Yu
scent of blood in
Qianqiu
his
snorted
aura.
disdainfully
It was
and
impossible
impatiently
to have
said,
such an aura
"Take
without
out the
dozens of
item.
lives on his hands.
I don't
and
want
a
to
long
repeat
period of
myself a
experience
third
as
time."
decisive person.
Ling Shi sighed.
This aura seemed to
No
be
matter how
frequently
good the
seen on
item
his
was,
father.
it
The
wasn't as
pillar of the
important as
nation.
his life.
The others
After
also
thinking
felt that
about
familiar
it,
aura
he didn't
and
have
were
the
momentarily
confidence that he could
speechless.
escape.
The second son of the civil official and step on the collapsed bricks as he walked out, was stunned by Yu Qianqiu's words.
retreated and stared
The
at him
beautiful
coldly.
woman with tears on her
Although he
face
said that he would let his opponent
and
go,
looked at him in surprise.
he still maintained a
It
certain
was
level
also
of
Sure
vigilance.
Xiaoyan's first
He
time
followed
seeing Yu
Ling
Qianqiu
Shi to the
like
main
this.
hall and looked
It
around.
seemed that his big
The
brother
Taoist
had really
temple was
angered
simple
him.
and didn't
He
have
shook
many
his head
decorations.
slightly and walked to his
In the
big brother's
center,
side
there
with
was
a
a
smile.
deity worshipped.
He turned to
But he
everyone
couldn't
and said,
recognize who it was.
"Mother, big brother."
A large praying
Second
mat
brother
below attracted
This
Yu
is my
Qianqiu's
martial
attention.
uncle and also my
His
savior.
eyelids twitched
If it
as
wasn't
he thought
for
to
martial
himself,
uncle, could the
I'm
immortal
afraid that little
supporting
Tian
token
would
be
never
hidden
be able
here?
to see mother
While
and my
Ling
two
Shi
brothers
was still
again.
sighing, The reason why he
Xueqi
introduced his big brother to his family as his martial uncle was
former's
obvious.
expression instantly
He was naturally
changed.
afraid that his family would look down on his big brother and cause trouble.
And two
He then
items fell to the
introduced his
ground.
3 relatives
The
to Yu
buckwheat husks
Chen
inside were
This
scattered
person
all over
was
the
actually
ground.
little
Yu
Tian's
Chen
martial uncle.
glanced at Ling Shi
Wasn't
and
that
slowly
also
picked up the
immortal?
2 items.
The few of them were surprised by how young Yu Chen also came in.
At the same
His
time,
boss's ferocity
they felt
just now was
uneasy and
deeply
thought that they
engraved
had
in his
neglected
heart.
him just now.
But he didn't know why
One
his
had
boss
to know
would
that
fight
in the
with his
Huaxia
life on the
dynasty,
line.
even
Seeing
the current
Yu Chen
emperor would
playing
treat
with the 2
cultivators
items
with
in his
great
hands,
courtesy.
and then looking
However,
at Ling
they
Shi's
had just
reluctant
cast them
gaze.
aside.
And the head of the civil
skipped a
officials
beat.
had even spoken
Could
rudely.
it be that boss
The
is
second
fighting
general
so hard
immediately
just to
bowed
snatch
and
other
said,
people's items?
Junior Shirin
Yu
Tian
Chen
greets
Cho
senior
carefully
immortal.
examined the items in
Yu
his
Chen
hands.
Cho nodded
The 2
indifferently.
items were a wooden
The civil
token and a
official
jade
leader was a
plate.
little fearful as
The
he
wooden
bowed and
token
said,
was simple and
Junior
unadorned,
Shiryutan
and
greets
its
immortal
sides were
elder.
engraved with
I
patterns.
didn't know immortal
On one
elder's
side,
identity just
the
now
words
and have
supporting
offended you.
immortals
I
were
hope
engraved.
immortal elder will
On the
forgive
other
me.
side, the image of an island
Yu
was
Chen Cho
engraved.
glanced at him
Releasing
coldly,
his divine
showing
sense
no
to
intention of
investigate.
forgiving him
He
at
could
all.
feel a roaming
The
wave
former's
of true
face
chi.
immediately turned
Clearly,
pale.
it was
Seeing
injected
her
by
eldest son's
someone.
embarrassment,
Needless
the
to
beautiful
say,
woman also
this was the
saluted and
so-called
said,
supporting
"This
immortals
mistress Li
token.
Hongyang greets immortal
The
master.
words 100
My
Flowers
husband
Valley
is away on an
were
expedition,
engraved on the jade
and
archive.
my eldest son lacks
There was
discipline.
also a surge of
I hope
zhenqi that had
immortal
been
master
channeled
will
into the
forgive
jade
us if we have
archive.
offended you.
There was nothing
Yu
special
Chen
about
Cho
the rest
really
of it,
didn't plan to
and
let
no
go
one knew
of the
what it was
Xueqi's
used for.
eldest son.
Yu Chen Cho looked
He
at
had
the
suffered
spirit
so
stone
many
and
sarcastic
asked,
remarks
"What is
in
this
Ong
thing
Kwang
used
Sung.
for?"
But he had no
Spirit
choice but to
Stone
lower
didn't
his
know
head.
whether to laugh or cry.
He didn't think that
He
a
didn't
mere
expect
mortal
that
would
the
dare
thing
to
he had
speak
spent
rudely
so
to
much
him.
effort to hide
This
would be found out
immediately
so
ignited
quickly.
the suppressed
He had
anger
thought
in
that
his
no
heart.
one would notice
But
where
this
he had
woman's
hidden
words
it.
had a hidden
Hearing
meaning.
Yu Chen Cho's
My
question
husband
and
looking
looking
at the
here,
thing in his
as an
hand,
immortal,
you
he
wouldn't
was
bully
slightly
my
taken
son.
aback.
Moreover, Xueqi
You
was
don't
looking at
even
him
know
with a
about the
pleading
100
expression,
Flowers Valley?
so he could only
Is it
suppress the
famous?
anger in his heart.
Holding the jade
Madam,
archive,
there's
Yu
no
Chen
need to
Cho
be
gave
so courteous.
a questioning
His
look.
words meant that he
The
would no
latter
longer
also
pursue
shook
the
his
matter
head,
of the eldest
indicating
son.
that he didn't know.
Li Hongyang and
He
her 3
couldn't help
sons
but ask in
hurriedly
a
thanked
deep
him and
voice,
ordered the servants
"Am
to
I
prepare
asking you,
food and
or are
wine
you
to
asking
properly
me?"
entertain the
Spirit
immortal.
Stone was
Yu
taken
Chen
aback.
Cho
tactfully
He
refused.
thought to himself
They had
that he
only
had
just
tolerated
met,
it, and things
it
had
was his
already
own
turned
fault
out
for
like
not
this.
being able to defeat
What was the point of
Xueqi
eating and drinking
Sighing,
together?
he explained.
Actually,
This is the
there was
entrance
another
token
reason
to the
why he
100
didn't get
Flowers
angry.
Valley.
The
His
100
cultivation
Flowers
was
Valley
indeed
is
not
a
that
marketplace
great.
for
Only at
cultivators
the
of the
5th level of
Huaxia
Qi refining.
Empire.
As
Even
long as you can
Xueqi
afford it,
had already
you
reached
can
the
buy
7th
almost
level of
anything
Qi
there.
refining.
You can
Although
also
the latter
exchange
still couldn't
items for
see through his
items of similar
cultivation
value.
if they were to fight. Who
That's
knows
a good
which side
place.
Xueqi would
Give me
side
the
with.
100 Flowers
In any
token
case,
as well.
it was
Yu
impossible for
Chen Cho
Xueqi
said
to help him
indifferently.
beat up his own brother.
Also,
Spirit
if his
Stone
cultivation
exclaimed,
was exposed,
"What's the use
would
of my 100
Xueqi
Flowers
still
token?
treat him as the boss
This
in the
thing
future?
is just a proof
This
to
was
avoid
really
being
hard to say.
interrogated when entering
He
the
remembered
100
that a
Flowers
certain
Valley
elder
in the
brother with a
future.
surname Li
Any
once said,
cultivator who
"When the
enters
people's
or
hearts are
exits the
scattered,
100 Flowers
it's not
Valley,
easy to lead a
regardless
team.
of their level, can
Finally
register and
realizing
claim
the
it.
importance of
It's
cultivation,
useless to take
he
someone
pulled
else's
Xueqi
token
to the side and asked him
I
to
see.
arrange a secluded
Yu
place
Chen
to
Cho
cultivate.
nodded and asked.
The latter
Where are the
immediately passed
locations
on
of
his
Fushan
eldest
Island
son's
and the
words to his
100
mother,
Flowers Valley?
and immediately the entire general's
You don't
mansion
even know
became
this?
busy.
The
Spirit
pillar of the
Stone
state
looked at
general's
him as
mansion
if he
had a
was looking
spacious
at an
back
idiot.
garden,
He
and a
really
small
wondered
courtyard
if
in
Yu
the most
Chen
remote
Cho was a
corner was quickly
cultivator.
cleaned up.
What?
The general's
You have a
mansion issued a
problem with
ban,
that?
and without
Don't you know
permission,
what it means to
no
be
one was
shameless
allowed
to
to
ask
enter
for
the back garden.
subordinates?
Although
Xiaotian,
Yu Chen
if your
Cho
family
said
asks
so,
about your
he was also
experiences,
lamenting in his
I
heart
think
that
you
he
should
was
choose to
indeed
tell them.
inexperienced.
Knowing too
He was
much
a
won't do
complete
them any good in the
rook.
cultivation
Also,
world.
it's best
Rolling
not to
his
let
eyes at
outsiders
Spirit
know
Stone,
about what
he
we're
thought to
doing
himself.
here.
This
Otherwise,
guy is a
if
little
Ong
useful.
Kwang Sung finds out one day, we'll be in
Spirit
big
Stone
trouble.
decided not to say
Yu
it.
Chen Cho said,
He thought,
the small
whatever you say
courtyard
is
was
right.
remote and quiet.
Why should I ask for
and
a
he was
rebuff?
very satisfied.
Yu Chen Cho rubbed his chin
At
and
this
paced
time,
around.
There were only
He
the
thought
two
for a
of them in
while
the
and
small
said to
courtyard.
Xiaotian,
I
"Xiaotian,
I'm leaving.
Sure,
Where are you
Xiaotian
going?
nodded.
The 100
Flowers
Flowers Valley
passed,
or
and
Fuxian
the back
Island.
garden of the pillar
I'm
of the
going
state
too.
general's mansion became
Sure,
a mysterious
Xiaotian said.
place.
Yu
Other
Chen
than the
Cho
third young
smiled
master
and said,
Sure Xiaotian,
"There's only one
no one
Fuxian
else had
token.
seen the immortal
You
living
go back
inside.
first.
As for the
After
matter
I
of
find the
immortal living
Foundation
in the back
Establishment
garden,
pill,
the
I'll
general's
come
mansion
find
had
you.
issued a strict
Don't
gag
worry.
order.
I
Those
won't
who were
forget
lucky
you."
enough to see it that day
Sure,
would not say a
Xiaotian was
word.
silent.
And the other
After
servants
a long
naturally
time,
didn't
he
know.
nodded and said,
The servants who
"I
knew about it would
understand.
secretly
I'll
worship
wait
the
for
small
you.
courtyard every
Boss,
day when they
be
passed by the
careful."
back garden.
After
The
that,
legendary
he walked
immortals
out of the main
lived
hall
there.
and called his big
The
brother
masters
who was
of the
hiding at the
general's
side.
mansion were very happy
Spirit
that there was
Stone
an
saw the
immortal
boy
living
lying
in
on
their
the ground.
house.
They
They
went to
always
check,
felt that they had a
but there was
backer,
no breath.
and their hearts were
Yu
very
Chen Cho
secure.
kicked him to
Most
death.
importantly,
Spirit
the immortal
Stone
had
shook
the
his head
demeanor of
inside.
an immortal,
Is
and
he
never
dead?
disturbed them.
Yu Chen
As long
Cho
as good
asked
wine and
indifferently.
food were sent over every
Spirit
day,
Stone
the
nodded his
immortal
head
wouldn't even
heavily.
take a step
It
out of the
could be seen
courtyard,
that he wasn't
let alone
very sad.
disturb them.
To a
But there was
cultivator,
one person who
killing
was
a
more
commoner
depressed.
wasn't a big
The
deal.
eldest young
Yu
master of
Chen
the
Cho
general's
weighed the
mansion.
100 Flowers
Once,
token
in
in his
order to
hand
show
and
off to the
handed it
immortal
over
who
with a
wanted to
smile.
accept him as a disciple,
He said, He mentioned that there was also an immortal hiding in his house. Ling Shi stood up. The immortal refused to accept him as a disciple, and even refused to see him. He shook his head helplessly and extended his hand to accept the 100-flower medallion. The root of wisdom. Suddenly, but after his wrist tightened, it was simply too torturous. The hand that was handing over the medallion had resist the temptation of immortality. Ling Shi turned so he set his sights on Yu Qianqiu, wanting to become his disciple, and pestered his third young master several times to recommend him. And the scene changed. But his third young master didn't agree at all and Spirit Stone into the golden pearl. I really can't see where you have the root of wisdom. Spirit Stone must have been tricked by someone. He was obsessed and didn't believe it no matter what. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and said, didn't want to recommend him because he had offended his martial uncle. This is my territory. And because of this, ordinary people don't have the fortune to enter. There was one time when he was blinded by untrustworthy and despicable into the small courtyard. You promised that as long as I handed over the Fuxian token as a disciple, you would let me go. The moment he stepped into the courtyard, he felt like he was in a fog, pointed his finger and couldn't get out no matter how many twists and turns he went. You're mistaken. And he didn't see a single person. Don't you think that I did what I promised you? This was originally a simple formation that Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said with a smile in case someone barged in. I only said that I wouldn't kill you if you handed over the token. Although it wasn't a powerful formation, I didn't say that I would let you go. It wasn't a problem to trap a mortal. That's why you are still alive and well. But he didn't expect it to trap this guy. Second, when you didn't hand over the token, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If you think about it carefully, his big brother out, you will know that I wasn't talking nonsense. So he could only beg Yu Qianqiu to let him go. I won't be breaking my promise if I kill you. After Yu Qianqiu understood why Shi Yutian was trapped, to the death. He shook his head and refused Shi Xiaotian, and fiercely saying that he wanted to keep Shi Yutian trapped for a few more days towards Yu Qianqiu. And if he didn't let his big brother suffer a little, he was afraid that there would be no end to it. Spirit Stone missed. Shi Xiaotian thought about it and agreed. From behind him. But after 2 days, if I want to kill you, it will be as easy as flipping my hand. Her eldest son anywhere. If you want to kill me, and the imperial court was also looking for him everywhere. In the end, I advise you not to waste your energy. His second brother would be too anxious. Stone was so angry that he cried out. That his big brother had barged into his martial uncle's courtyard and was trapped. However, no matter what he did, Yu Qianqiu always disappeared into the courtyard in the back garden. This went on for a long time. To enter the courtyard suddenly, they saw Shi Yutian running around like a headless fly. He looked at Yu Qianqiu and it was obvious that he was very weak since he hadn't eaten or drunk anything for 2 days. Is this the form displacement transposition that only a cultivator at the end of the crossing tribulation stage can use? Yu Qianqiu thought that since the food and lodging belonged to him, he didn't want to go overboard. Hiding your cultivation? So he released Shi Yutian and warned him that if he barged in again, he wouldn't let him off lightly. Stone said it was impossible. This was only a small matter. After he calmed down, but after the mother and son saw Yu Qianqiu's divine regardless of whether this was really form displacement transposition. After Shi Yutian had a taste cultivation, his heart itched even more. As easy as but he didn't dare to barge in again. It turned out that relying on the large amount of spirit in the Taoist temple. Thinking of this, successfully broke through to the 10th level of qi refining in a short period of 1 year. No longer thinking of fighting with his life on the line. After reaching the peak of qi refining, wouldn't tell him that he could go wherever he wanted here. After asking the white fox, a very serious problem was placed in front of him. Foundation building, impossible, core but not doing it. Nascent soul. This is what a smart person would passing with the 4 thresholds that cultivators couldn't cross. Go over there and see what's over there. These 4 thresholds couldn't be crossed without the help of external forces. He pointed at a mountain of cloth bags. External forces referred to the miraculous pills that could cleanse one's meridian. He was pointing. Why must one cleanse one's meridian? Chen suspiciously. A cultivator's body was like a vessel. He walked to the foot of the mountain. If the vessel wasn't strong enough, many of the cloth bags were able to bear a stronger cultivation. Stones. If one forcefully broke through, things that no one wanted and were casually thrown there. And that was death by the explosion of the body. Could this mountain be made of spirit stones? Asked the white fox. Spirit you were trapped in the cave for so many years and didn't take any miraculous so many spirit stones. So how did you break through from the nascent soul stage to the tribulation beside him and said with a smile, "Now that I know this is the magical effect of the golden pearl, stones. Does that mean I can also use it to advance? Now you should know which one of us is worthy of being called spirit stone. This is not the same thing." The cultivation world was divided into 3 paths. Was now completely convinced. Human, demon, he couldn't beat Xiao Chen in a fight. But Xiao Chen could use money to crush the demon path. He couldn't help but reveal an other 2 paths. Expression. The demon path cultivation and body refinement were carried out at the same time. After I left supporting if the body refinement was not successful, I wandered into spirit cultivation would be difficult. That's why people respectfully called me spirit among the 3 paths. But it was also the most powerful among the 3 paths. After he chased away the original owner of Spirit Stone Temple, they didn't cultivate spiritual qi. But Yu Qianqiu kept staring as long as there was enough Yin Immortal's expression. They could increase their cultivation without any restrictions. Effect. However, this was the effect due to the restrictions of the laws of heaven and earth. Immortal here. Its power was also the weakest among the 3 experience in the cultivation world. Although the human path was divided into the righteous path and the demon path. As for Spirit Stone Immortal's trivial matters, in fact, he couldn't be bothered. It was just a difference in the cultivation method. Frowned and said, "In the end, what Spirit there was Stone only Immortal? One path. Chicken is peerless and duck is intelligent. and the
It
three
sounds
paths
so
were
bad.
respected.
I'll
For
change
the
your
demon
name.
path,
I
if they wanted
guarantee
to
it will
ascend to
sound
the
better
immortal
than
realm,
now.
they wouldn't have a
Change
chance
my
if they
name.
didn't cultivate into a
Spirit
human
Stone
form.
Immortal asked in
Perhaps there was a
astonishment.
gain and a loss.
Why?
The
You
laws
don't
of
want
heaven
to?
and earth gave the human
Yu
path the
Chen-cho
best,
shouted in a
but
deep
gave it the
voice.
weakest body.
Spirit
Therefore,
Stone
the
Immortal
human
shook
path
his
could
head
think of
silently.
many ways to increase
He
their
didn't
cultivation, but he
the
also
body
didn't
was the
say that
biggest
he didn't
restriction.
agree.
In
Anyone
short,
would feel
it told him that
uncomfortable
although the
changing
golden
their
pearl
name
was
again and
extremely
again.
strange,
Since
Yu
it
Chen-cho
existed in the
stared at
world,
Spirit
it
Stone
had to follow
Immortal's
the
red
laws of
face
heaven
and
and
3
earth.
strands of long beard.
Some things couldn't be changed
He blushed and
randomly,
said,
so it could
"From
help
now
demons,
on, you will be
but it
called
might not
Guan
help
Yu."
humans.
Guan Yu's
The white
courtesy
fox
name
also
is Yun
said,
Chong.
when the golden
It
pearl
means
was in my
Guan,
body,
as in gate,
although I didn't use
Yu,
it, I could feel the changes in my body and cultivation day after day.
And
How did you
long, as
feel
in
after
long.
swallowing it for such a long
What
time?
do you think of this
Yu
name?
Chen-cho immediately
Guan
became
Yu,
dejected,
courtesy name
and
is
told her
Yun
that
Chong.
other than his physique becoming a little
Spirit
better,
Stone
he
Immortal
didn't feel
couldn't figure
anything.
out why he
The
chose
white
this
fox
name.
sighed.
He muttered
This
a few
kind
times
of treasure
but
of
couldn't
heaven
find
and earth
anything
must have its
special
own
about it.
advantages for the human,
He was puzzled
demon,
and asked,
and ghost paths.
"Why did you choose
There
this
was no
name?"
other way.
Yu
It
Chen-cho
seemed that he
chuckled and
still
made a
had to get
mighty
a building
pose of wielding
foundation
the
pill
green
to build
dragon
his
crescent
foundation.
blade.
She also didn't eat it when he asked the white fox.
He said,
so she didn't
"Don't
know
you
how
think
it was
this
done.
name is very mighty,
She only
very
knew
bold
that the
and
bigger
very
sex
weighty?"
should have the recipe
Spirit
to refine
Stone
the
Immortal
building
shook his head
foundation
and
pill.
muttered,
And it
"I
wasn't an
can't tell.
important secret.
Guan Yu,
It seemed
how
that the
weighty can a
spirit
feather
grass
be?
used to refine the pill
Looks
was
like
quite
this
hard
guy
to find.
isn't too satisfied."
Yu Chen-cho was
Yu
depressed.
Chen-cho rolled his
If he
eyes
had
and
known
chuckled.
earlier, his
said,
relationship
"As
with
long
the
as you
clear
promised
sky
to use
sect
this
wouldn't
name
have
in the
been so
future,
stiff.
I can also
He couldn't
guarantee
just
that you
run
will
back
succeed
now.
in building your
Wasn't
foundation
that
within
courting
10
yet?
years." Not only
Really?
was he depressed,
Spirit Stone
Sure
Immortal's
Xiaotian was
eyes lit
also
up.
depressed.
He said
Only
happily,
now did he
as
find
long
out
as you
that
can
this
really
martial
help me
uncle of his
succeed in
actually
building my
hadn't passed the
foundation
building
within 10
foundation
years,
stage.
I promise
Causing
that I
him
will
to hold
never
onto a
change my
pile of
name from
spirit
now on.
stones and
Guan
cultivate
Yu.
with all his might.
If I can't do it, I will
In the
naturally
end,
change my
even
name
if Yu
back.
Chen-cho gave him more
Haha,
spirit stones,
it's a deal.
he wouldn't dare
It's
to
a
absorb
deal.
them anymore.
Both of them
Why?
laughed loudly.
The true chi in his
Yu
body had
Chen-cho
already
happily
reached the
patted his
limit of
shoulder
the ore
and said,
refining stage.
Guan Yu,
If
from
he
now
absorbed
on,
any more,
you will follow
his
me
body
well.
would explode.
I guarantee
Who
that you
would
will
dare
eat
to
and
play
drink
with their
well
lives?
every day.
In the
Sooner or
courtyard,
later,
the two of
you
them
will
looked at the
cultivate
pile
to the
of spirit
tribulation
stones
passing
inside.
stage.
Although these
Spirit
things were
Stone
good,
nodded and
what could they
smiled.
do?
He
Where
didn't
to
know
get
why
the
this
building
guy was so
foundation
happy
pill
just
became
because
a
he
headache.
changed his name.
Suddenly,
Sigh.
Yu Chen-cho
Sure enough,
shouted,
experts
"I got
all
it."
have some strange
Sure
hobbies.
Xiaotian's body
Yu
trembled,
Chen-cho
and
was
his
very
eyes lit up.
pleased.
In his
Boss,
previous life,
you got
he had
away?
offered countless
Yu
incense sticks
Chen-cho
to Second
smiled
Master
and said,
Guan and kowtowed
"Doesn't your
countless
big brother
times.
know some bull
But in the
asterisk
end,
T
he still
celestial
died.
being?
Now,
Go call your
he
big
got
brother
Guan
over.
Yu as his follower.
I have something to ask
He
him."
believed that he would definitely be very impressive when he went out.
Chapter
No.
30.
When we go out,
That's
I
right.
have to order a set
Sure
of green
Xiaotian
robes and a
slapped
green
his
hat
forehead
for
and
him to
ran
wear.
out without saying
Then,
anything else.
I have to carry a
After
long
searching
sword
the
on my
residence,
waist and hold
the
the hilt of the
servant said
sword
that
in
the
my hand
eldest
while
young
following
master had
behind
gone
me.
on an errand.
This way,
He didn't
I will
want
look
to wait
impressive,
any longer.
scary, and
He
awesome when I go
immediately
out.
ordered
Someone to prepare a horse and ran to the yamen where his eldest brother worked. He anxiously
Chapter
found his
33.
eldest brother. Although
When
he
the
was
latter
pleased
heard
with
that it was
himself,
Yu Chen-cho
he did
who
not
was looking
believe
for
that a
him,
few simple promises
he
could
ran out
completely
without even
subdue a
asking
person.
for leave.
It was
As for the
necessary to
sedan
use the
chair that he
necessary
used to work
methods.
in,
He
he
didn't
still
want to
had to
sit in
ask
it
the
anymore.
white fox about
He
this.
untied the horse
With a
at the
thought,
entrance of the
the
yamen
entire
and
space
disregarded
within the
the
golden
civil
bead
officials'
appeared in his
politeness,
mind. He got
including
on the
every
horse
blade
and
of grass
galloped
and
home.
every tree. The way he
After
got on the
reaching the
horse
10th
was
level
very
of chi
smooth.
refining,
The
he was
territory
indeed the
inside
son
the
of
golden
pillar
bead
of the
had
state
expanded by
general.
dozens of
He
times.
had a good upbringing.
What made Yu
Eldest
Chen-cho
brother,
pleasantly
wait.
surprised was that
That's
small
my
streams
horse.
and lakes began to
Sure
appear in his
Xiaotian
territory.
shouted at the entrance
Because
of
of
the
this,
yamen.
he purposely got
However,
a lot of different
his
kinds of
eldest
fish to
brother
raise,
wouldn't hear him.
birds, even if he
Beasts,
did, flowers
he probably
and plants.
wouldn't come back.
The bamboo
He had no
pavilion was
choice
empty,
but to let his eldest
Sister
brother
must have
sedan
gone to play
chair
with the
carry him
flowers
back.
and plants again.
The servant of the
It was
general's
already
residence
slowly
was stunned when he
changing.
saw Sure
This was a
Yu
good
returning
thing.
on a horse.
The corner of Yu
He
Chen-cho's
smiled and
mouth
said,
slightly curled
"The
up,
eldest young master revealing a smile.
His
Sure,
thoughts
Tian
changed.
jumped off the horse
In
and
a
threw the
flower
reins
bed,
away.
the white fox
He didn't have the
Snow-White
time to
clothes
care
were
about
squatting
him.
in the flower bed.
He ran to the
pulling out
backyard
the
and was
weeds.
about to enter
Guan
when he
Yu
seemed
held
to
a
think
pile
of
of high-grade
something.
spirit
He
stones
held
and
onto
smacked
the
her
wall
lips,
and shouted
asking,
excitedly,
"I still
Celestial
haven't asked how I should
Master,
address
sure
you?"
Tian is here.
Yu Chen-cho.
He was
You
afraid
can
that
call
no
me
one
boss
inside
from now
could hear
on.
him.
Yu
So he
Chen-cho
shouted
replied.
twice, then immediately
Didn't he
said,
say he went
"Wait
on an
here,
errand?
I'll be back soon."
Why was he here so soon?
After saying that,
Yu
his
Chen-cho
figure
was slightly
disappeared.
stunned.
Guan Yu did not
He
deny
then
it
said
and sneered,
politely,
"Yu Chen-cho
Tian
boss.
is here. Come
Beauty,
in."
pulling out the weeds
He
again.
sounded like a senior
Yu
talking to a
Chen-cho
junior.
suddenly appeared beside the white
Tian
fox
didn't
in the
care
flower
about
bed.
this.
The latter
He
seemed to be
accepted
used
the
to
order
this.
and walked in as
She
if
did
it
not
was a
even
matter of
raise her
course.
head and was
With
still
the
busy
permission
with
of
her
the
work.
Celestial Master,
She only frowned
didn't
and asked,
encounter the same
"Why did you bring
situation as
someone in
last
again?"
time. His anxiety
Sister,
turned into
don't
joy.
be offended.
On the steps
It's
under
just
the
that the
eaves,
territory is
the
getting bigger
Celestial
and bigger,
Master was looking
so I
at him with a
specially
smile.
found someone to plant
Sure, Yu
trees.
Tian was so
Yu
excited that he
Chen-cho
couldn't
casually
speak.
replied.
He knelt
The
down
white
and
fox did
kowtowed
not say anything
continuously.
else.
"What are you
The
doing?"
former squatted beside
"I just
her
want
and
to ask you a
smiled.
question.
Sister,
Why are
let
you
me
so
ask you
excited?"
something. I want to control someone and make him loyal to me.
Won't this shorten my life?
Do you have any ideas?
Yu Qianqiu was a little dumbfounded.
What she was doing
He
and
didn't
frowned.
know that Sure
Who do you want to
Yutian would
control?
come before his younger brother could explain
it's
himself.
this guy I brought in.
He hurriedly walked
Just
down the
now,
steps
we
and
were
helped
fighting
Sure
with our
Yutian
lives
up.
on the line outside.
He was so excited that
your
his
little
body
brother
trembled a little.
almost died in
Did
his
your
hands.
brother tell you everything?
I brought him in here.
There is something I
If
need
he
your help
can't
with.
beat me,
Yu
he'll
Qianqiu
surrender
said with a smile.
But who knows if
Sure
he's
Yutian
sincere
nodded
or
and
just
shook his
pretending.
head.
Yu
Qianqiu
Qianqiu
said
said
worriedly,
not knowing
White
what he
Fox's
meant.
complexion
He
changed
hurriedly
when she
replied,
heard that her brother had
"Immortal
almost been
master,
killed.
if there's anything
She
you
raised
need,
her beautiful
just tell
face
me."
and saw that the
As long
corner
as
of
it's
Yu
something I can
Qianqiu's
help
mouth
with,
was clearly
let alone
stained
one,
with blood.
even if it's
His
100 or
clothes were
1,000,
also torn.
it's not a problem.
It was obvious that he had fought with someone and
That's
was
good.
injured. Yu
She
Qianqiu
immediately
nodded in
snorted
satisfaction
coldly and
said with a
disappeared.
smile. Yu
Last
Qianqiu
time,
was
I
startled.
heard that you wanted to become
Suddenly,
the disciple of an
a
immortal.
scream came from afar.
Where does that immortal
While
live?
he was still in shock,
Can you take
the
me to
White
meet
Fox
him?
appeared out of nowhere
Sure
with a
Yutian
low-grade
hurriedly
spirit
knelt
stone
down
in her
again and
hand.
said, "Please don't misunderstand, immortal
She
master."
said coldly,
"I won't
I've
look
trapped
for
his
him
Yuan
again.
Shen here.
I will
You
follow
can use
you
it without
wholeheartedly
worry.
from now on.
If he dares to have
With
any other
that,
thoughts,
he kowtowed
I'll
again.
make him suffer a
This
fate worse
unlucky
than death."
child.
His
After he finished
imagination was
speaking,
really strong.
a ball of flames
As
appeared in his
expected of
hand
someone
and wrapped
trained
around
in
the spirit
officialdom.
stone.
He didn't
Immediately,
answer the question
a
and
series
always
of
liked to
wails
came
came
from afar. Yu
The
Qianqiu
flames
was a little
disappeared,
annoyed and shouted,
and the wailing stopped.
"All right." The White
Stand
Fox
up.
placed the spirit stones
Sure
into the
Yutian
small
was so
sachet
scared
on
that he
its
stood up
waist.
obediently
Oh my
and looked
God.
at him in fear.
So powerful.
Yu Qianqiu said in a
Luckily,
deep voice,
he didn't do
"I
anything
don't
to
have any
Sister
other
White.
meaning.
Otherwise,
I just want
if
you to
did,
take
it
me
would
to
be
him.
fun.
I
Yu
have something
Qianqiu's
to do.
forehead was covered
Do
in
you
cold
understand?"
sweat.
He
smiled
understood.
awkwardly.
So that was
"Sister,
what it
you're
was
really
about.
good.
I
He
wonder if you
squeezed
can
out a
teach
smile
me.
and said,
That
if your
immortal is in the
cultivation hasn't
Spirit
reached
Stone
the
Temple
original
30
infant
miles
stage,
outside the city.
you can't
He's
forcefully
called the
extract
Spirit
other
Stone
people's Yuan
Immortal.
Shen.
I'll take you
Also,
there now.
the caster's cultivation
Damn
must
it.
be higher than
This
the
guy was
caster's
a
unless the
donkey.
caster is
He
willing to
couldn't
give
be
up their
polite.
Yuan Shen.
Yu Qianqiu
After the White
grunted and
Fox
thought to
finished
himself,
speaking,
she
Spirit
squatted
Stone
down and
Immortal?
continued with
He
her
must
work.
have a lot of spirit
Hee.
stones.
I'll go see
I
how
don't
he's
know if
doing.
he has as many as I
Seeing
do.
that she ignored him,
The two of
Yu
them walked to
Qianqiu
the entrance
glanced
of
at
the
the
white
general's
robe wrapped
mansion.
around her buttocks.
Sure Yutian had
Because
just
she was
ordered the
working,
servants to prepare
his
a
little
horse
heart
when Sure
skipped a beat.
Xiaotian arrived in a
He
swaying
thought to
sedan
himself,
chair.
He
What a
rolled his
sexy
eyes at his
buttocks.
big brother and
His
asked
figure
for another
suddenly
horse.
disappeared.
The three
Guan
of them
Yu's
got on
red
the
horse
horse.
had already turned
Sure
pale.
Yutian led the
He
way
sat on
and
the
ran
ground
out
of
and
the
stared
city.
blankly at
Out
Yu
of the
Qianqiu's
city,
appearance.
the
three of them headed
He
north.
scrambled to hug his
After
thigh
running
and
on the
trembled.
official road for a while,
"There's a woman." Sure
There's a
Yutian
woman
led the
here
two
who
of them along a
forcefully
small
extracted
path.
my Yuan Shen.
Not long after,
Yu
a
Qianqiu,
dilapidated
no.
Taoist temple
Boss,
appeared on a
do you
small
know
hill
her?
in front of them.
Help me beg
When
her
they
to
reached
return
the
my
foot of the
Yuan
hill,
Shen.
Sure Yutian
Guan Yu
suddenly
was
stopped
indeed
his horse
scared
and
out of his
pointed up.
wits. When the
He said
woman in white
nervously,
first appeared,
"The immortal
he
lives
was still
there.
amazed by her
He's
beauty.
the master of the
Who would have
Taoist
thought
temple.
that the sudden burst
He has
of
a
aura
rule
would
that
force
people
him
who
to the
go up
point
the
that he
mountain
could
are not
even
allowed
move.
to ride on a
She
sedan
placed
chair
one
or on
hand
a
on his
horse.
head and easily
Otherwise,
pulled out
he
his
won't
natal
meet them.
primordial spirit.
The two of them
The
looked
pain
at the
was
small
simply
hill
worse
that was
than
only
death.
a fart tall.
He was very
They
clear
didn't
that if his
expect
Yuan
there to
Shen
be
was
such a
controlled
rule.
by someone,
They looked
it
at
meant
each
that
other.
his life was in
the
someone
end,
else's hands.
it was Yu Qianqiu
If that
who said with a
person was
smile,
unhappy,
"That's pretty
he wouldn't
awesome.
even be able to
It
run.
seems like he's really capable."
Yu Qianqiu
Forget
cried
it.
out in alarm.
Let's follow the
Your
host.
natal primordial
Let's
spirit
go
was
up.
also extracted.
The three of them got down
Guan
and tied
Yu's
their horses
trembling
to a
body
tree.
stopped.
They
He
walked to the
slowly
front
raised
of the
his head and
Taoist
said in
temple.
shock,
The
"Is
door
your
was
Yuan
closed.
Shen also?"
Yu
Hey,
Qianqiu gave Sure
who
Yutian
said
a
it
look,
wasn't?
asking him to
Yu
knock on the door.
Qianqiu shook his
The
head and
latter
helped
nodded
Guan Yu
and
up.
smiled bitterly.
But you don't
He
need to
walked to
worry.
the door and knocked
She's
on the
my
door.
big sister.
After a while,
Since you're one of
they
my
heard
people
footsteps
now,
from
I
inside.
can guarantee that you
The
won't
door
be in
creaked
danger
open
with your
and a
primordial
Taoist
child's
spirit
head
trapped
popped
in her
out.
hands.
What?
She's your
Sure
sister.
Yutian said with a smile.
Guan Yu
Little
screamed and
master,
pushed him
could
away.
you please inform the master that?
shouted.
Before he
She's
could
your
finish,
sister.
the Taoist
Of
child
course
said
you don't
angrily,
have to worry.
"Why is it you again? It
My
must be
master
you
said
and your
that he
brother
would
who
never see
conspired
you
to
again.
kill me.
I'll
With
kill
that,
you."
The door was
Guan Yu
closed
just
again.
waved his palm and took a step forward.
Sure Yutian
The muscles
was
on
given
his
the
face
cold
twisted
shoulder
and he fell to
He
the
turned
ground with a
around and
bang.
smiled at the
A
two of them.
miserable scream
Yu
came from his
Chen-cho
throat.
was stunned.
"I'll do it."
Sure, Xiaotian
He
knew
rolled
about his
around on
brother
the ground,
and the Taoist temple.
looking extremely painful.
He knew that he had annoyed
Even
the
Yu
person
Chen-cho
inside,
couldn't stand
so he
it
went to
anymore.
knock on the door.
The white fox's
After knocking
voice
a few
came
times,
from the air.
the Taoist child
"If you
inside
dare to have
shouted,
any evil
"My
intentions
master
towards
said
my
that he
brother
won't be
again,
seeing any guests
I'll make
today.
your life worse than
Sure,
death."
Xiaotian turned
"I
around
won't
and
dare."
spread his palms
Guan Yu
innocently,
used all his
indicating
strength
that
to
there was
choke out.
nothing he could do.
Then,
He
his
then
body
pointed to the
loosened
wall.
and he laid on the
It
ground
seemed
again.
like he was asking
It was
if they
indeed
should
a good
climb
way
over
to
the
control
wall.
people.
Do I look
But he
like
couldn't
someone who would do
discourage him
that
from
kind of
doing
sneaky
things for
thing?
him in the future.
Yu Chen-cho
sneered.
stared at him.
He
After
squinted his
confirming that
eyes
he
and
was
looked
fine,
around.
he sighed. The Taoist temple was
Yin-cha,
not big.
you're too impulsive.
It occupied a small
Do you
hill.
still remember that
There was
10th level
nothing
chi
special
refining
about the
cultivator who
surroundings.
called me boss? He did
Just
not
like
expect
you,
such a
his
powerful
Yuan
cultivator
Shen was
to live
also
here.
extracted by my
Let
sister.
me try.
But he knew how to behave.
glanced at the word
He knew
spirit
that my
stone
sister
temple
liked to take
on
care
the
of
Taoist
flowers and
temple.
plants.
He walked
Look
to a
at the flowers and
millstone-sized
trees here.
bluestone opposite
They
the
were
door
all
with
done
his
by
hands
him.
behind his back.
Guess what happened
The
in
two
the
brothers
end?
looked at each
My
other,
sister was
not
happy
knowing
and
how
returned
he was
his
going to
Yuan
knock.
Shen.
Damn
Now,
it!
he's alive
I'm giving
and
you
well.
face,
Yun
but you
Chang,
don't want it.
You're worth learning
Yu
from.
Chen Cho cursed
Guan
under
Yu,
his breath.
who had been staring
He
at him with
stretched out
dead
his
fish
hand
eyes,
and lifted the
moved his
100-pound
eyeballs.
bluestone.
There was some
Before
spirit
the two
in
brothers
them.
could react,
His
they heard
Adam's
him
apple
shout,
trembled as
"Get
he said,
out here!
You're not
The
lying to
bluestone
me?
in his hand
He
flew
struggled
into the
to
wall.
get up. Bang!
Yu Chen
A
Cho
loud
rolled his
sound
eyes
came
at
from
him
the
and
courtyard.
snorted.
Dust
Do
flew
I look
everywhere.
like the kind of person who
Even
would lie to
standing
people so
outside,
easily?
they could feel the
Guan
ground
Yu's gaze
shaking.
fell on the
The
forest.
two brothers were
He realized
dumbfounded.
that those trees
An
were
angry
indeed not
voice came
native.
from inside.
There were obviously
Who dares
traces
to
of
cause
them being
trouble in my spirit
transplanted.
stone temple?
He nodded thoughtfully.
You bastard!
Do you
Yu
know
Chen
why I
Cho
named you
replied in a
Guan Yu?
loud voice.
Yu Chen Cho
He hurriedly
asked.
walked to the door of the
Seeing him
Taoist
shake his
temple
head,
and
he asked
fiercely
again.
kicked it.
Do you
With
know
another
that there
bang,
are other empires
two pieces
outside
of the
door
door
directly
flew
flew
in? The
You're
latter
courting
nodded,
death,
indicating
following
that he
the
knew.
angry shout. He
A
asked
figure
again.
jumped over the wall
Then
and
have you
flew
been
out.
there?
As
The
soon
latter
as the
still
person
shook his
landed,
head.
he saw
Yu
Sure
Chen Cho
Yu heaved a sigh of relief.
He pointed at him
He
and
sighed.
scolded.
Let
So
me
it's you
tell you a
again.
story. How
In
dare
the
you
Far
bring
East,
people here to fight?
there was an empire
Do
whose
you want to
regime had
die?
decayed.
After
There was a
saying
scene
that,
of warlords
he
fighting for
glanced
power.
at the other two.
At that time,
Sure Yu
there were
Tian
three
was already
heroes
scared
named
stiff by
Liu
Yu Chen
Guan
Cho's
Yu,
actions.
and Zhang Fei.
When he heard the three of them
words,
became sworn
he
brothers
quickly
in the
knelt
peach
down
garden.
and kowtowed.
Guan Yu beheaded
Immortal
Yan
Master,
Liang and Wen Chou.
Please forgive me.
Guan Yu was in the
Immortal
Chao camp,
Master,
but his
please
heart was in the
forgive me.
Han camp. The younger
Guan Yu
brother saw
protected
his
his
sister-in-law's
sister-in-law
actions
1,000
and
miles
frowned.
away.
Overcame
He pulled him
5
up and
passes
shouted,
and
"Big
beheaded
brother,
6 generals.
you're giving the general's
Guan Yu
residence
dragged
too
his
much
blade to
face."
subdue Huang Zhong.
Putting on such a big
Guan Yu
show.
went to the battle
I
alone.
was wondering what kind of
Guan Yu
bullshit
might
immortal
ching.
had such a high
Let's
cultivation
not
level.
talk about it.
So it's just an
Anyway,
old man
in
at the
the
10th
end,
level.
Guan Yu
Yu
became a
Chen Cho
well-known
laughed.
hero in the empire. He was a courageous
With
and
one
loyal
look,
hero.
He could
Every
tell that this
family
person was
offered
also at the
incense and
10th level
worshipped
of the
him,
chi refining
and
stage.
people called him
The
Second
person
Master
who came
Guan.
had a sage-like
After
appearance.
he finished,
He
he
thought
thought
to
to
himself
himself
that
that
it
it
was
was a close
about
call.
40 years
He
old.
almost told them about how
He had
Guan
3
Yu was
long strands
beheaded.
of beard,
Seeing
and
Yu
his
Chen
face
Cho
was
narrate
flushed.
the story so
If he
vividly,
held the green dragon
Guan Yu's
crescent blade in his
chest
hand,
he
he
stood
would
up
look
and
like
stared
Guan
at
Yu
Yu
from
from
the
the
TV
TV
shows
shows
in
in
his
his previous
previous
life.
life.
The person who
said
came was
slowly,
the temple's
"You're
master.
not lying to me, are
Spirit
you?"
Stone Immortal. He was shocked when
Is
he
there
saw
really
the other
such
two.
a hero?
Needless to
What?
say,
Am I the kind of
Xiaotian
person
was
who
also
would
at
lie
the
to
10th level
others?
of the chi
I
refining
swear
stage.
to God, if I
However,
made up Guan Yu's
he
story,
couldn't see through
I
Yu
curse
Chen
myself
Cho.
to be struck by
It didn't
lightning
matter
and
if
die
he
a
couldn't
horrible
see
death.
through Yu Chen Cho's
Yu Chen
cultivation
Cho
level.
patted his chest
What
and
was
swore.
worse was that Yu
He
Chen
thought to
Cho could
himself,
see through his
"I don't know if
cultivation
Guan
level
Yu's
at a
story
glance.
is true or not,
This meant
but I
that Yu
definitely
Chen
didn't
Cho's
make it up.
cultivation level was higher
Since
than his.
there really is such a heroic
Moreover,
person,
both of
it's
them
not
didn't
wrong
look
for me to
very
take his
old.
name.
To have
It's also
such a
fitting.
cultivation level at
From
such a
now
young
on,
age,
I'll be called
they
Guan
must be
Yu,
disciples of some
Guan
big
Yun
sect.
Chang.
Although
After
he
he
couldn't
finished,
judge
he
one's
stroked
age
his
by
long
appearance
beard
in
and
the
made a
cultivation
signature
world,
gesture of the
they were
Guan
not people
family
he
that
could
Yu
afford
Chen
to
Cho had
offend.
mentioned.
Thinking
It was
about
quite
this,
similar.
the matter of him being hit by stones was already a small matter. Spirit Stone Immortal's
Chapter
expression
34.
changed.
Don't
He
talk
quickly
about
bowed to Yu
useless
Chen Cho
things.
and said,
Guan
I
Yun
didn't know
Chang did
Senior
it,
was coming.
not said it.
Spirit Stone.
Yu Chen Cho
Please
pulled
forgive
Miao
me for
Yi
my
out of the
offense.
Golden Pearl and back to
Sure
the
Yu
Taoist
Tian
temple
was
of
stunned by
Spirit
Spirit
Stone.
Stone Immortal's
He took out the
respectful
jade
attitude
archive and handed it to
What
Miao
would
Yi,
happen if
saying,
even an immortal
"First,
respected
take
him?
me to 100 Flowers
He
Valley
looked
for a
at
stroll."
Yu Chen Cho with a fiery
Guan Yu
gaze.
took it and saw
Being
that the
addressed
Taoist
as
priest
senior
was
by
about
such
to
an old
leave.
person was a little
He
hard to
heaved a long
accept.
sigh and said,
Yu Chen Cho
"Wait."
thought about it and
Then
felt
he walked
relieved.
over to the boy who
The
had been dead for a
cultivation
long
world was a
time and
place
carried
where the
him to the
strong
back of the
preyed
hall
on the
to
weak.
bury him.
Whoever
Yu
was
Chen
strong
Cho
was
nodded.
awesome.
Since
Thinking that
the
he
other
had
party
some
couldn't
humanity
see
through his
When the
cultivation
two of
level,
them reached the foot
it
of the
wasn't
mountain,
wrong to address
they
him as
found
senior.
the horse still
He
tied on smiled and said, Yu Qianqiu untied the reins and mounted it,
I have something
saying,
to ask you.
Follow me. Spirit Stone
Then
Immortal
he urged
nodded
the
and
horse
said
to gallop.
respectfully, You want me to run on a horse?
Please come inside.
Guan Yu's
Yu
red face was
Qianqiu glanced
clouded,
at Shi
but his
Yuqian,
primordial
whose eyes
spirit
were
was in
shining,
the hands
and
of his
said to
sister,
Lilton,
so he
I'll
didn't
be
dare
right
to
back.
act rashly.
You two wait
He
for a
raised his
moment.
Xueqi to the limit.
The two
leaped
brothers
up,
agreed
and followed. Seeing how
Yu
respectful their
Qianqiu
master
didn't
was,
lead him anywhere
the
else,
boy inside the
but
door
back to
quickly
the
ran
capital.
back to prepare
They
tea.
didn't go back to
The
the
two
pillar of
brothers
state
didn't
general's
wait for long
mansion, though.
outside the door.
The two of them
Changed
suddenly,
out of their
they
tattered
heard the
clothes
sound of
and
fighting
redressed
coming from
themselves.
inside.
At Guan Yu's
Shocked,
request,
Shi
Yu
Xiaotian
Qianqiu
flew into
spent
the
a lot of
courtyard.
effort to dress him up as the Guan Yu from the Three Kingdoms. Guan Yu stood there with a green hat and green robes, a long sword at his waist, and his hand on the hilt of the sword. What an imposing sight! Yu Qianqiu's eyes shone with a strange light. He really was a living Yun Chang Guan. But when he thought about how this Guan Yu used to be a Taoist priest and swindled people, he couldn't help but laugh. The owner of the tailor shop couldn't help but praise, Sir, you have a good look. Guan Yu couldn't contain his joy, and called for the owner to bring him a bronze mirror. As expected, a red-faced Guan Yu appeared in the mirror, wearing a green robe and a green hat, holding a long sword in his hand. His eyes were closed, but he didn't look angry. He almost couldn't recognize himself. After exiting the tailor's shop, Guan Yu followed beside Yu Qianqiu. He was secretly trying to figure out Yun Chang's unparalleled demeanor that boss had mentioned. He held the hilt of his sword and walked forward with his head held high and chest puffed out. When the passers-by saw this, they all looked over and whispered, "This person really looks mighty and extraordinary." Guan Yu's gaze was even more focused. Yu Qianqiu turned his head and took a glance. He was overjoyed and thought to himself, "Who's as awesome as I am, leading Guan Yu around on the streets?" The two of them arrived at the horse market and wanted to buy a horse. After walking around the horse market a few times, Guan Yu still couldn't find a horse that he was satisfied with. Yu Qianqiu became a little impatient and shouted, "Is there a need to go through so much trouble to choose a transportation tool?" Guan Yu stroked his long beard and said slowly, "Didn't you say that Yun Chang's horse is called Red Rabbit, and that it's a precious horse that can travel 1,000 miles in a day? Of course I have to choose a good horse." Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes at him and felt a toothache. He blamed himself for reaping what he sowed and was completely speechless. In the end, they really couldn't find that so-called precious horse, so they could only choose a healthy one. Guan Yu sighed endlessly. The two of them got on the horse and went straight out of the city gate, leaving a trail of dust behind them. It was troublesome that he hadn't reached the foundation building stage. Otherwise, if he could fly on a sword, he wouldn't have to go through the pain of running around for days. 10 days later, Guan Yu led Yu Qianqiu to a forest deep in the mountains. Looking around, the mountain road ahead was rugged. It was already impossible to travel on a horse. Yu Qianqiu jumped off the horse and pointed to the depths of the clouds in front of them. He asked, "Is that the 100 Flowers Valley? It doesn't look like it. It's impossible to see people in the clouds." Guan Yu also got off the horse and smiled. After spending a few days with Yu Qianqiu, he found that he wasn't the kind of person that was hard to get along with, so he felt a lot more at ease. He explained, "If anyone could see Bai Hua sect, then wouldn't it be troublesome? Wouldn't even those normal people be able to come and go as they please?" Bai Hua Palace set up a big formation in the 100 Flowers Valley. The clouds are only a distraction, mainly to stop normal people from going in and out. "Let's go." "But what about these two horses?" "What? Are you going to send them to your parents? Just leave them here." Yu Qianqiu laughed mockingly. Guan Yu stroked his beard and pondered for a while. Then, he pulled out the long sword from his waist and broke the reins of the two horses. He removed the saddles and slashed the horses' buttocks twice. The two horses neighed in pain and ran into the deep mountains without any restraint. "Heh, you're quite kind, but there are probably quite a lot of ferocious beasts in this forest. I don't know if they'll be able to live past today." Yu Qianqiu shook his head. Guan Yu was surprised by his words. He looked at the direction the horses ran in and said in a low voice, "They better pray for themselves. This isn't something we can handle. Come on, let's go up the mountain." Before he could finish his words, the sound of horses neighing could be heard, and the two horses ran back. Guan Yu was a bit dumbfounded. Yu Qianqiu laughed. "These horses are used to being tamed, they can't survive in the wild. They'll probably run back in fear as soon as they smell the feces of ferocious beasts. Forget it, I'll just be a bit kind." Saying so, he walked up to the two horses and touched them. The two horses disappeared. Seeing that Guan Yu was still in a daze, he waved his hand and said, "What are you spacing out for? Let's go. I've already sent them to my sister's place." Guan Yu shook his head and said, "I'm not in a daze. I'm just wondering who you and your sister are, and where exactly does your sister live?" After saying that, he walked up the mountain with a face full of disbelief. "I'll let you know when I get the chance. Tell me what's going on with this Bai Hua Palace." Yu Qianqiu followed. Bai Hua sect was founded not too long ago, less than 200 years ago. Speaking of which, it has something to do with supporting Immortals Island. Bai Hua sect leader, Bai Hua Fairy, was originally the daughter of the previous island lord of supporting Immortals Island. Unexpectedly, she married Yen Bugue, the son of the previous palace lord of the #1 demonic sect, the 10,000 Demons. It caused quite a bit of trouble at the time. On one side was the #1 righteous sect, and on the other side was the #1 demonic sect. Under the pressure from both sides, the two sect leaders expelled the couple from their sects, and they both stepped down from their positions. It was here that the couple established their sect, establishing Bai Hua Palace. Bai Hua Palace can be considered as an anomaly in the cultivation world. You can't say that it's righteous, nor can you say that it's demonic. Yet, both the righteous and demonic sects have to give it some face. Because of this, the 100 Flowers Valley where Bai Hua Palace is located has become a trading ground for the cultivation world. Both the righteous and demonic sects don't dare to cause any trouble here, and each goes about their own business. Don't you think it's strange? Hee. That's interesting. I'll have to take a good look. Yu Qianqiu laughed. The two of them chatted as they walked, winding their way into the depths of the mountain mist. The thick mist in the mountain was very strange. It didn't disperse even when the wind blew. The two of them stopped in front of the thick mist. Guan Yu took out a jade archive and imbued it with his true qi. The jade archive shot out a beam of white light towards the depths of the mist. The thick mist immediately roiled, gradually parting to reveal a path. Guan Yu instructed, "Don't run around. Just follow the path." The two of them walked along the path, and the mist behind them slowly closed up again. Yu Qianqiu was secretly amazed. Even the most advanced technology in his past life would have a hard time achieving this, right? Not long after, a city gate that wasn't too big appeared in front of them. Several cultivators armed with weapons stood guard at the gate. The cultivators glanced at the two of them, but didn't say anything. However, Guan Yu pulled Yu Qianqiu over and said, "Fellow Taoists, this is my friend's first time here. He needs 100 flowers entrance token." A cultivator sitting behind a table glanced at Yu Qianqiu, then flipped open the booklet on the table. He picked up a brush and asked, "Name? Which sect?" "Yu Qianqiu. I'm a loose cultivator with no sect or sect." Yu Qianqiu answered unhurriedly. Before coming here, Guan Yu had already informed him. Of course, he couldn't possibly say that he was Ong Guangtsung's disciple. 100 flowers entrance token, 1 mid-grade spirit stone, or 100 low-grade spirit stones, the cultivator said plainly. Yu Qianqiu nodded. He pretended to take out a mid-grade spirit stone from his robes and handed it over. Guan Yu's eyelid twitched when he saw this. Only then did he remember that the one thing this guy didn't lack was spirit stones. The cultivator took out a jade archive and let Yu Qianqiu imbue it with true qi. After that, the cultivator made a hand seal and shot a beam of white light at the jade archive. Once the jade archive was handed over to Yu Qianqiu, the matter was settled. "This registration is really simple," Yu Qianqiu muttered as he touched the jade archive in his hand. Guan Yu smiled. "It looks simple, but unless you personally hold the jade archive and imbue it with true qi, you won't be able to barge in." After passing through the city gate, Yu Qianqiu's eyes immediately lit up. He really didn't expect to find such a good place in the depths of the mountains. Shops and taverns stood in great numbers, and hawkers could be seen everywhere. Cultivators dressed in all sorts of clothing came and went. Chapter 35. As the two strolled around the city, Yu Qianqiu looked around. Everything here was new to him. Guan Yu glanced at him. Although his anger had dissipated a lot after getting along with him for a while, he still couldn't help but take it to heart that his primordial spirit was controlled by someone else. He asked, "Are you going to take a look and leave, or are you going to stay here for a few days?" Yu Qianqiu was full of interest. He nodded and said, "Why do you want to leave when you just arrived? Stay a few more days. You're familiar with this place. Where do you think is a good place to stay?" Guan Yu inadvertently smiled and said, "Come with me." The two walked forward and passed by a big square. There were many people setting up all kinds of stalls. Guan Yu brought him to the front of an inn. Yu Qianqiu looked around and discovered that the inn in front of him was probably the most imposing one he had seen so far. The signboard above the entrance read, 100 Flowers House. He didn't think too much about it and followed them in. As soon as they entered, a waiter came over and greeted them enthusiastically. "Two guests, are you going to eat or stay?" Yu Qianqiu looked at the waiter and found that he was also Qi training level 7. Guan Yu went to the front of the counter and knocked, calling out, "Manager, give me 2 of the best rooms." The fat man, who was busy at the counter, hurried over. The fat man smiled and said, The best room costs 10 mid-grade spirit stones a day, and 2 rooms cost 20 mid-grade spirit stones. May I know how long the 2 of you would like to stay? How many days? Guan Yu turned and asked. Yu Qianchou was stunned for a while, then he frowned and said, Are you kidding me? 2 rooms cost 20 mid-grade spirit stones a day? Disciples from normal sects can't even afford a day's stay even with half a year's worth of spirit stones? The fat shopkeeper said, Little brother, I'm afraid this is your first time here. Our 100 Flowers house was opened by the 100 Flowers Palace, and it's also the best inn in the entire 100 Flowers Valley. If you stay here, you can rest in peace. No matter if it's the righteous Tao or the devil Tao, not many would dare to cause trouble here. Therefore, 20 mid-grade spirit stones a day is definitely worth it. Humph. If no one dares to come and cause trouble, doesn't that mean there are still people who dare to come and cause trouble? Yu Qianchou muttered. When he saw the manager's expression change, he thought about how it wasn't beneficial for him to offend the members of the Flower Palace since he just arrived here, so he could only change his words. Then I'll stay for a day first. The shopkeeper's expression immediately relaxed, and he said with a smile, Then I'll give the 2 of you 2 superior rooms. Yu Qianchou nodded and pretended to put his hand into his empty lapel. He took out 2 handfuls of spirit stones and placed them on the counter. When the shopkeeper saw that he was able to grab 2 large handfuls of spirit stones from his flat clothes, he couldn't help but stare at him strangely. Yu Qianchou's heart trembled, and he thought to himself that he would have to buy a storage bag to show off. After the shopkeeper registered, he called the waiter to bring the 2 of them upstairs. Yu Qianchou inadvertently glanced at the strange smile on Guan Yu's face. He was slightly startled, and he immediately understood what was going on. I was wondering why he brought me to such an expensive place. So it turns out that he has a problem with me. Damn it! Do you want me to lose some money? This isn't a good sign, and I have to put it out in time. The place that he spent a lot of money to stay in was indeed different. The items and furnishings in the room were really good. When he opened the window, he saw the square. Looking at the bustling square, Yu Qianchou was in a good mood. The haze of being schemed against by Guan Yu had also lightened a little. And the market of the cultivation world. Let's see what good things they have. Yu Qianchou muttered a few words, and he slowly walked out of the inn. He walked in the market with his hands clasped behind his back, looking at the vendors around him. If one didn't know the situation, who would know that this was the cultivation world? Yu Qianchou slowly walked from stall to stall, but he didn't find many things that he recognized. When he arrived in front of a stall, he discovered that it was very quiet, completely different from the bustling surroundings. Suddenly, he saw that the table was filled with all kinds of talismans. He couldn't help but stop and ask, Fellow Taoist, what are these used for? The stall owner hurriedly stood up, pointed at the talismans, and introduced, These are smoke talismans. When you encounter danger, they can be used to escape. 1 low-grade spirit stone for 10 of them. These are fire talismans. When you throw one out, it can ignite a 1-meter-tall flame within a 3-meter radius. It can last for 10 breaths of time. 1 low-grade spirit stone for 1. These are arrow talismans. Within a 300-meter radius, it can hit anything. It can penetrate a 1-foot-thick brick wall. 2 low-grade spirit stones for 1. These are Vajra talismans. The more Yu Qianchou listened, the brighter his eyes became. These were simply good things that were necessary for murder and arson. He couldn't help but carefully size up the stall owner in front of him. He was a young man in his early 20s, a level 8 aura refining cultivator. Fellow Taoist, do you want to buy them? If you buy more, you can get a lower price, the young cultivator sincerely asked. Yu Qianchou smiled and asked, Did you make all these yourself? The young cultivator nodded and said, I made them myself. This is a secret technique passed down in my family. If it wasn't for my lack of cultivation and the fact that I can't make more powerful talismans, I wouldn't have been reduced to selling these low-level talismans to make a living. Yu Qianchou smiled and asked, What's wrong? Don't you have any relatives in your family? The young man sadly lowered his head and slightly shook it. I want to buy them, but I don't know how effective they are, Yu Qianchou said with a bit of hesitation. The young cultivator became a bit anxious and said, Fellow Taoist, are you afraid that the talismans I make won't be effective because of my young age? If you don't believe me, We can find a remote place and try it. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his nose and muttered, then let's find a place and try it? If the effect is really good, then I want all of them. Fellow Taoist, please wait a moment. Hearing that he wanted all the talismans if the effect was good, the young cultivator quickly packed up his stall and led Yu Qianqiu to the outskirts of the small town. Yu Qianqiu looked around and found that it was really remote. He nodded his head in satisfaction and said, Fellow Taoist, try a few talismans. The young cultivator immediately took out a few different talismans from his bag and displayed them one by one in front of him. The effect was really good. Yu Qianqiu was very happy and couldn't help but feel strange and asked, I see that your stall is deserted. It seems like there isn't even anyone looking. Could it be that the talismans you make are so unattractive? The young cultivator slowly lowered his head and replied honestly, This is the first day I've set up a stall here. Many people were very enthusiastic when they first saw the talismans, but once they heard that I made them, they didn't want to buy them. Because talismans are usually made by people with higher cultivation, so. His voice lowered. Yu Qianqiu understood what he meant and thought that this unlucky child was too honest. Couldn't he just say that it was his father or master who made them? Fellow Taoist, just treat it as helping me. You saw the power of my talismans earlier. Talismans of the same level aren't any weaker than others. If you buy more, I will definitely give you the lowest price. Otherwise, I won't even be able to pay for tomorrow's stall. The young cultivator said in a pleading tone. All right. I want all of them. Yu Qianqiu patted his shoulder and said as he looked around. The young cultivator happily nodded his head. However, he heard the buyer pat his shoulder and say, I want you too. Before he could react, he felt his vision blur. Chapter 36. Yu Qianqiu looked around again, walked back with his hands behind his back, and murmured, Young man, follow me from now on. I promise you'll eat and drink well every day. Someone in my previous life said it well. What's the most expensive thing in this century? Talent. Damn it. Only today did I realize I have the potential to be a talent scout. What a pity. He wandered back to the market, saw the young cultivator's empty stall, and couldn't help but smile. He continued to wander between the stalls. Fellow Taoist, where can I buy a storage bag? Yu Qianqiu finally met a cultivator that he could confirm was of a lower level than him, and asked him. The cultivator smiled and said, Storage bags are relatively high-grade items. You can't buy them from the stalls. You'll have to go to the surrounding stalls to find them. Yu Qianqiu looked around at the well-decorated stalls, and cupped his hands in thanks. Passing through the square, he looked at the stalls one by one, and found that the items here were clearly marked, but the prices were indeed not comparable to the stalls outside, and some were even scarily expensive. After walking through a few stalls, he didn't find any storage bags, and under the guidance of others, he finally found a shop called Hidden Secrets Pavilion, and indeed found the storage bag he wanted to buy. The shopkeeper inside greeted enthusiastically, Fellow Taoist, what would you like to buy? Yu Qianqiu looked around and said, I want to buy a storage bag. The shopkeeper laughed and said, Fellow Taoist, you've come to the right place. Our sect's storage bags are famous in the cultivation world, they are durable, and one can be used for 100 or 200 years without a problem. How big do you want? Our store has storage bags that can hold up to 3 rooms. What's the price? Forget it. Just give me the cheapest one. Yu Qianqiu said, he was just using it for show anyway. There was no need to waste money. No matter how rich he was, he wouldn't do what that prodigal did. The shopkeeper was slightly stunned. This was the first time he met someone who spoke so straightforwardly, and said with a slightly embarrassed smile, The cheapest one is naturally the one with a room, it's 1 high-grade spirit stone. 1 high-grade spirit stone? So expensive. Shopkeeper, you didn't lie to me, did you? Yu Qianqiu exclaimed. The shopkeeper didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Fellow Taoist must be joking. This shop has been in business for hundreds of years and storage bags have always been sold at this price. If you don't believe me, you can go out and ask around. Forget it. Since it's a time-honored brand, there's no need to ask. Give me one. After saying that, he took out a high-grade spirit stone. After receiving the storage bag, Yu Qianqiu still mumbled, Such a small bag actually costs a high-grade spirit stone. After hanging the bag on his waist, He didn't even need to look to know that it was a cultivator. After leaving the hidden secret pavilion, Yu Qianqiu continued to stroll around one shop after another. He discovered one thing, and that was that almost all of the famous sects in the cultivation world had a shop here. He wondered if there was a shop owned by Ong Guangceng. After strolling around, he finally saw Ong Guangceng's logo in front of a shop. He didn't know what Ong Guangceng had for sale, and what was on sale inside. He wanted to go in, but he was afraid of bumping into someone he knew. He shook his head. Safety first. It was better not to go in. Junior Marshal sister. Come here quickly. Our Ong Guangceng shop is here. Yu Qianqiu didn't walk far when he suddenly heard a familiar voice, and he turned to look. Hey! The world was really small. There would be no meeting without enmity. It was really an old acquaintance, the direct grandson of Ong Guangceng's sect leader, Lu Zhengguang. He didn't know who that junior marshal sister was, but he felt that her back was somewhat familiar. After thinking for a while, he resisted the urge to go over and mock Lu Zhengguang. Although this was 100 Flower Palace's territory, and no one dared to fight, he couldn't beat him. Running over to show off his tongue wasn't something a hero would do. After thinking about it, it would be better to wait until he had the strength to beat someone up in the future. The mountains didn't change, and the rivers flowed. There would always be a time when he met him and took care of him. After strolling around the stalls for a while, he bought a bunch of things that he didn't know if they were useful or not. In any case, after buying things that he was interested in, the sky gradually darkened, and he slowly walked back to 100 Flower House. When he walked to Guan Yu's room, he found that Guan Yu was still sleeping soundly on the bed. He couldn't help but sigh. This was the sorrow of refining Qi level 10. If you couldn't break through to the foundation building stage, then what was the point of cultivating? It was no different from eating and waiting for death. Yun Chang, wake up. This boss will take you to eat and drink. Yu Qianqiu used his foot to wake Guan Yu up. The two went downstairs of 100 Flower House and ordered a bunch of food. Looking at the table full of food, Yu Qianqiu ordered whatever was good. He might be stingy with other things, but he would never treat himself unfairly when it came to food. Drinking big bowls of wine and eating big pieces of meat, it felt so good. The stalls outside were lit up, and even the stalls in the square had become a night market. The two ate and drank, enjoying the scenery outside. Junior Marshal sister. Come quickly. This is the best inn in the 100 Flowers Valley. 100 Flower House. Manager, give me 2 of the best rooms. He heard that familiar voice again. Yu Qianqiu turned his head to look. It was really a small world for enemies. It was that guy Lu Zhengguang again, leaning on the counter to pick a room. Forget it, I'll just pretend I didn't see it. Just as Yu Qianqiu was about to look away, a young girl walked in the door, and he couldn't look away. It was none other than the woman he was most familiar with in Ong Guangceng, Chu Ping-er. As Chu Ping-er looked around and sized up 100 Flower House, she also saw that familiar face near the window. Chu Ping-er couldn't believe it. She thought to herself, am I seeing things? Isn't he dead? The two just looked at each other. Yu Qianqiu pouted and gestured at Lu Zhengguang. He put a finger in front of his mouth and made a shushing gesture. Chu Ping-er's face immediately lit up, and her eyes showed unconcealable excitement. The other party's actions undoubtedly proved his identity. She looked at Lu Zhengguang and knew what he was referring to. She nodded slightly. The two booked a room and were brought upstairs by the staff. On the way upstairs, Chu Ping-er couldn't help but look at him again. Yu Qianqiu smiled and pointed at himself, then upstairs, telling her that he was also staying upstairs. Chu Ping-er walked up with light steps. Seeing that Lu Zhengguang had also gone upstairs, Yu Qianqiu felt a chill run down his spine. He actually dared to get a room with his chick. He must be tired of living. Then he remembered that Lu Zhengguang had booked 2 rooms, and he felt a little better. However, he still couldn't swallow his anger. Guan Yu used his chopsticks to knock on Yu Qianqiu's chopsticks. He smiled and said, "Boss, she's already upstairs. Are you still in a daze? Why? Have you fallen for her?" Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes at him. At this time, a guest at the table next to them turned around and said, "Young man, you have to look carefully. That's Ong Guangceng's man. Ong Guangceng is now a big deal. You can't just mess with him." Yu Qianqiu turned his head to look at the guest behind him, then glanced at the simple dishes on the table. He smiled and said, "If you don't mind, please come over and have a drink with me. I have something to ask." The person was a slightly sloppy old man. He laughed and said, "Then I won't stand on ceremony." He stood up. Yu Qianchou smiled and stretched out his hand. "Please." The old man came over and sat down. Yu Qianchou poured him a glass of wine and toasted him together with Guan Yu. After the old man ate a few mouthfuls of food, Yu Qianchou said respectfully, "I heard from you that Kwangtsung is now a big deal. I'm ignorant, so I hope you can enlighten me." Chapter 37. I can't say that I'm teaching you, I've only heard about it from the grapevine. However, in recent years, Kwangtsung has been stirring up chaos in the cultivation world. The cause of this matter seems to be the Phantom Palace, robbing Kwangtsung of a batch of spirit stones. The old man said. Yu Qianchou's eyelids twitched and asked, "Is the palace lord of Phantom Palace called 100 Charm Beauty?" "Yes." The old man nodded and sighed. Phantom Palace is ranked 5th in the Devil Dao. But for some reason, they actually mustered a large force to rob Kwangtsung's spirit stones mine. Kwangtsung has been silent in the cultivation world for many years, and his disciples are said to be getting worse with each generation. But this matter completely angered Kwangtsung. Rumor has it that Kwangtsung's back mountain has more than 30 crossing tribulation stage cultivators. This is more than 30 crossing tribulation stage cultivators. Looking at the entire righteous and devil Dao, how many sects can take out such a number? These people brought nearly 100 nascent soul stage elders to attack the Demon Illusion Palace. In just half a day, the Demon Illusion Palace, which is ranked 5th in the Devil Path, was removed from the list. The palace master and several elders were severely wounded and disappeared. So powerful, Guan Yu said in shock. Yu Qianchou didn't have much of an idea of the so-called strength of the various sects in the cultivation world, but he didn't expect that the righteous Dao, which is ranked 6th, would attack the devil Dao, which is ranked 5th in less than half a day. After staying in Kwangtsung for so long, he only knew that Kwangtsung was ranked 6th. As for how strong the 6th was, he was completely clueless. However, the Phantom Palace was also quite unlucky. They wanted to rob spirit stones, but they didn't manage to do so. All the spirit stones went into other people's pockets. In the end, they brought disaster upon themselves. It was just a pity that the beautiful palace mistress was gone. He wondered how she was doing now. Yu Qianchou smiled sheepishly at the thought of the huge pile of spirit stones in his hands, and the food and drinks in front of him were all exchanged with those spirit stones. This Kwangtsung is really amazing. Not only the Phantom Palace, but also some of the small devil sects that have offended Kwangtsung in recent years have all been eradicated. Kwangtsung's series of actions were truly amazing. The balance of power in the entire cultivation world has been completely broken. I'm afraid that this rare peace in the cultivation world will set off another storm. The old man shook his head. He ate a mouthful of food and drank a glass of wine. He glanced at Yu Qianchou and teased, "That's why I told you not to provoke Kwangtsung." "Of course not. I just took a second glance at him because he's so pretty." Yu Qianchou replied awkwardly. Seeing Guan Yu and the old man laughing wretchedly, he couldn't help but change the topic and asked, "Senior, you have an extraordinary appearance. May I ask which sect are you from?" The smile on the old man's face froze. He touched his face and looked at himself. He said, "You're such a hypocrite. This is the first time I've heard someone say that I have an extraordinary appearance." Yu Qianchou quickly said, "I'm talking about inner qualities, inner qualities." Guan Yu laughed quietly at the side. It seems that this old man is ignorant and inexperienced. It turns out that you can use extraordinary appearance to describe inner qualities. Forget it. I won't argue with you because of the good wine and dishes. This old man is 10,000 demons Qiu Wu Yuan. The old man said indifferently. Guan Yu was shocked and said, "You're from the number 1 devil sect, 10,000 demons?" "Why? This old man is from 10,000 demons. What's wrong with that?" Qiu Wu Yuan said as he glanced at Yu Qianchou. He felt strange. He had noticed that this young man in front of him was a cultivator, but he couldn't see through his cultivation. This was really strange. Could it be that this young man's cultivation was higher than his? Yu Qianqiu didn't know what Qiu Wuyuan was thinking. He didn't mind which sect 10,000 demons belonged to. To him, the so-called devil sect was similar to the mafia. He cupped his hands and said, "So it's Senior Qiu. I've heard a lot about you. I've heard a lot about you." Qiu Wuyuan's face twitched and said, "What are you talking about? Have you heard of this old man's name?" "Ah. This old man is so stubborn. He knows that I'm just being polite, but he doesn't give me any face." Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, "Let's not talk about it. Let's drink and eat." After eating and drinking, the two of them politely sent Qiu Wuyuan out of 100 Flowers' house. After that, Yu Qianqiu wanted to go upstairs to meet his goddess sister. However, he was stopped by Guan Yu and wanted to go to the night market. He didn't have the mood to do that, but it was still early. Lu Zhongguang might still be with Chu Ping so he listened to Guan Yu and the two of them strolled around with full stomachs. Guan Yu suddenly saw the pouch on Yu Qianqiu's waist. His eyes lit up and he said, "I've never used a storage pouch. I want one too." "Go buy one then. I'll just walk around here. Come back and find me." Yu Qianqiu nodded. Guan Yu stretched out his hand and said, "Give it to me." "Give what?" "Spiritual stones to buy a storage pouch." "Damn. You live and eat from me. Don't you think it's too much to ask for pocket money from me? Didn't you say you'll be my boss and let me follow you? Also, the spiritual stones I have are not enough to buy a storage pouch. You're not so stingy as a boss, right?" "You have so many." Yu Qianqiu quickly interrupted. "All right, stop yelling. I'll give it to you." He pretended to take out a high-grade spiritual stone from his storage pouch. Guan Yu took the spiritual stone and shook his head. "It's not enough. Give me more. The 100 Flowers Valley has a lot of exotic flowers and plants. I want to buy some seeds for your sister." "Buy a gift for my sister? Don't tell me you like my sister? I advise you to give up on this idea. If she's not happy, you'll be in trouble," Yu Qianqiu said suspiciously. "Don't let your imagination run wild. Didn't you say your sister likes flowers and plants? Do you want me to learn from her?" Guan Yu said. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He remembered that he did say that to him. It turned out that he was reaping what he sowed. He took out a handful of spiritual stones with a pained expression and gritted his teeth. "You really don't know the cost of daily necessities. Go back after you're done. I'm not going to shop anymore." He turned around and left. His good mood was ruined by Guan Yu. "Which room is Chu Ping staying in?" Yu Qianqiu paced back and forth in the hallway of the upper room of 100 Flowers Valley. He just asked the shopkeeper downstairs, but the shopkeeper told him with a smile that he couldn't tell him. Just looking at Chu Ping made people think of her beautiful figure. It really made people anxious. Without a choice, Yu Qianqiu looked around to make sure there was no one around. He tiptoed and pressed his face against the door to eavesdrop one by one. After 7 or 8 rooms, he heard Lu Zhongguang's fawning voice in front of one of the rooms. Seeing that the room was right next to his, he couldn't help but press his ear against it to hear what he was saying. Chapter 38. Inside the room, Chu Ping sat on both sides of a bright carved round table, quietly listening to Lu Zhongguang's flattering words. Looking at Lu Zhongguang's uncontrollable arrogant expression, she sighed in her heart. Was this still the senior brother Lu that she had dreamed of? In her impression, senior brother Lu had an elegant temperament, was gentle and kind, and was the dream lover of all the female disciples of Ong Kwangtsung. She didn't know when it started, but she had slowly grown tired of him. Looking at the face that she had once thought was the most handsome in the world, Chu Ping's eyes slowly moved away, and an ordinary face quietly appeared in her heart. In the forbidden pool, he was so scared that he hugged his clothes and hid. After that, he stopped a man with a bloody nose. At that time, the man was so scared that he couldn't speak properly. He looked so stupid in his panic. In the end, he actually got kicked down the mountain by him. But how could she blame herself for that? At that time he was alone. She couldn't help but misunderstand, and it was a deep misunderstanding. She even had the urge to kill him. If it wasn't for the peeping in the forbidden cave, she didn't know how long she would have misunderstood. Elder Hao's death, that silent cry, and the blood he spat out, all showed his true feelings. Just think about it, How could such a person do such a dirty thing?
Facing the sect leader without fear, facing him bluntly, how many disciples of Ong Kwang-tsung could do that?
Facing the scolding of trash, how many people could do that?
If it wasn't for senior brother Lu's palm, Ong Kwang-tsung probably wouldn't know that he was the kind of person who was willing to live in obscurity.
Facing the song that was sung all over the world, he clearly knew that he was the one who composed it, but he didn't seek fame or profit, turning a deaf ear to it. If I didn't know, if I didn't expose it in front of you, would you continue to hide it like this? When I saw your helpless and miserable smile in the spirit stone mine, do you know how much my heart hurt? When I heard that you were killed by the demonic path in the spirit stone mine, do you know how many times I cried for you in the middle of the night? Do you know how happy I am to see you appear in front of me silently again today? He actually lived here as well. Could this be the so-called fate? Recalling Yu Qianqiu's sign language, Chu Ping'er smiled. As for what Lu Zhengguang was saying, it could be said that he wasn't listening at all. Yu Qianqiu and Lu Zhengguang, who were eavesdropping outside the door, naturally did not know what she was thinking. If Yu Qianqiu found out about it, the consequences would be unimaginable. Lu Zhengguang also noticed that his junior sister was a little distracted. He was slightly stunned and stopped talking. But Chu Ping'er was still in a trance. Lu Zhengguang's face showed a hint of anger.
As the direct grandson of the Azure Light sect leader, his status could be said to be extraordinary.
Which of the female disciples in the sect did not secretly have a crush on him? The woman in front of him was also the same.
He knew all of this, but he had a long-term ambition, wholeheartedly devoting himself to cultivation.
When he was successful and famous, these female disciples would be at his mercy. Not so long ago, Chu Ping'er actually distanced herself from him. The way she looked at him also lost that strange look. Finally, she attracted his attention. Compared to the other female disciples, she was the most outstanding one. The most outstanding female disciple actually lost interest in him. This was undoubtedly a provocation to him, who was used to being high and mighty. How could he bear it? Therefore, he took the initiative to approach Chu Ping'er.
But the result of his pursuit was that he seemed to be getting further and further away.
Thinking of this, Lu Zhengguang's facial muscles twitched. He took a deep breath and adjusted his emotions. He picked up the teacup on the table and touched it lightly. The sound of the teacup woke up Chu Ping'er from her trance.
Lu Zhengguang smiled and said gently, "Junior sister,
the whole of Ong Kwang-tsung knows my feelings for you. Don't tell me you don't know?" Chu Ping'er hesitated for a moment and nodded lightly. This time, she followed Lu Zhengguang out to play alone under the persuasion of Grandmaster Lu Wanqian. Before she came, Grandmaster had already made it clear that he hoped that she and Lu Zhengguang could become cultivation partners. Due to the pressure from Grandmaster, she was already prepared to yield. What else could she do if she didn't yield? In Ong Kwang-tsung, there were some things that a lowly disciple like her could not decide. But she never expected to meet Senior Uncle Yu, who should have been dead a long time ago here. Bastard! You really want to woo my girl? How could you say such a disgusting confession? I'm so angry.
My dear fairy sister, for the sake of the next generation of the cultivation world, you must hold your ground.
Outside the door, Yu Qianqiu listened to her and cursed under his breath. Seeing that Chu Ping'er was unmoved, Lu Zhengguang frowned and took out a long jade archive.
He said, "Junior sister,
take a look at this." Chu Ping'er reached out and took it.
Turning it over and over, she said doubtfully, "It looks very ordinary.
It's neither too long nor too short. I can't tell what's so special about it." Outside the door, Yu Qianqiu's expression changed. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't defeat Lu Zhengguang, he would have kicked the door open to see what the adulterous couple was up to.
He thought to himself, "Lu Zhengguang, don't tell me you've even taken out the tool to carry on the family line.
How *King shameless." What he heard next made him heave a sigh of relief. "Junior sister. This jade archive is no ordinary item. I've heard that 3,000 years ago, there was a pill grandmaster in the cultivation world, right? This is the pill formula that countless generations of the pill grandmaster have painstakingly compiled." Lu Zhengguang said. "Ah, pill formula."
Chu Ping'er stared at the jade archive in her hand and exclaimed, "Is this the pill grandmaster who used to be the #1 sect of the righteous path for countless years?"
Wasn't it said that they were destroyed by the combined forces of the Devil Path 3,000 years ago? How could something that belonged to them fall into your hands? It was no wonder that Xueqi was so shocked. Pill formulas were the most precious things in the cultivation world. A good pill formula was enough to set off a bloodbath in the cultivation world. Although absorbing the spiritual energy contained within spirit stones could increase one's cultivation, for those who had reached a certain level of cultivation, spirit stones weren't very useful. Things were different with a good pill formula. With a good pill formula, consuming one pill would be equivalent to a year of bitter cultivation, or even several years. For cultivators, advancing from one stage to another was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Just like how Xueqi needed a foundation building pill to advance from the Qi training stage to the foundation building stage. Although foundation building pills were precious in the cultivation world, almost every sect had the pill formula to refine them. But what about pills that could allow one to advance from the core-bearing stage to the nascent soul stage, and the tribulation stage? Although every sect had their own secret recipes and treasured them like treasures, the effects of consuming them depended on one's luck. It seemed that only a small portion of people were lucky. From this, it could be seen how precious a good pill formula was in the cultivation world. It was definitely not inferior to a good transcendent artifact. The Pill Grandmaster was one of the cultivation sects that excelled in this field. It was rumored that once their disciples reached a certain level of cultivation, they would have a 30% chance of breaking through after consuming the pill. Do not underestimate this 30%. If Xueqi had 100 original infant stage cultivators, and 30% of them broke through to the tribulation stage, what would that mean? That would be an additional 30 tribulation stage cultivators. This kind of probability was something that none of the sects dared to think about. Chapter 39. Xueqi's surprised expression made him very satisfied. Lu Zhongguang said a little proudly, "My grandfather obtained it by chance when he annihilated a small devil sect some time ago. The different levels of pill formulas on it were enchanted with different levels of restriction. It's funny that the devil sect couldn't break the restriction, so they threw it aside for so many years. Hehe. The first level of restriction has been broken by my grandfather. Some of the pill formulas inside are really extraordinary." Xueqi frowned and said, "This is the spoils of war of the sect, and such an important treasure. It should belong to the sect. Why did the sect head give it to you?" When she asked this question, she actually suspected that the Lu grandfather and grandson wanted to keep this treasure for themselves. Of course we have to hand it over. Who dares to keep this thing for themselves? Even if they keep it for themselves, who can rely on their own ability to gather all the medicinal ingredients on the pill formulas? But my grandfather said that whoever gives this thing to the sect will be given a great credit. My grandfather is already the sect head of Xueqi, so. Lu Zhongguang smiled meaningfully. Looking at Xueqi, he said slowly, "So my grandfather said that this thing should be given to the sect by me. Then the great credit will naturally fall on me. The purpose of coming out this time is to find a very good reason to hand this thing over to the sect. Otherwise, I won't even go out of the mountain gate of Xueqi. Taking this thing out will only arouse suspicion." Xueqi was slightly shocked. First of all, the dignified sect head of Xueqi would actually do such a thing. It was simply unbelievable. Second, he even told such a secret to her. Wasn't that forcing her to obey him? Xueqi, who was outside the door, pricked up his ears. Something that could make the Lu grandfather and grandson spend so much effort on it was definitely not an ordinary treasure. He didn't expect this secret to be accidentally heard by him. Xueqi didn't even dare to breathe loudly as he looked at the two ends of the corridor. Seeing that it was still quiet, he put his ear to it again. In fact, if it weren't for the inexplicable special effect of the golden bead, how could he eavesdrop on Lu Zhongguang's conversation with his cultivation? He would have been discovered long ago. However, although this merit is great, I am not willing to enjoy it alone. As long as Junior Martial Sister agrees to be my Tao companion and cultivate together, I am willing to give you half of the merit. When I hand it over, I will report to the sect that this treasure was discovered by both of us together. What do you think, Junior Sister?" Lu Zhongguang threw out a condition that he thought was very attractive. Xueqi was in a dilemma. Ever since she saw Xueqi downstairs, she had already given up on the idea of dual cultivation with Lu Zhongguang. But now that Lu Zhongguang had told her everything, she had no choice but to agree. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Junior Marshal Sister. Can't I move you with my sincerity? Lu Zhongguang saw that she was still hesitating. His tone was a little unhappy, and his words were already mixed with threats. Chu Ping'er naturally heard it.
She bit her lips and said with a smile, "Senior Marshal Brother, such a great merit suddenly appeared and fell on me.
My mind is a little confused. Can you let me have some peace and quiet? I will definitely give Senior Marshal Brother an answer tomorrow.
Okay.
Then I won't disturb Junior Marshal Sister's rest." Lu Zhongguang stood up and replied readily. Chu Ping'er stood up and said, "Senior Marshal Brother, take care." Lu Zhongguang nodded.
His eyes swept over the latter's beautiful face and full chest, and then glanced at the gums in the room.
In his mind, he could already imagine Junior Marshal Sister moaning under him tomorrow. He didn't think that Junior Marshal Sister could refuse the temptation he threw out. He walked out with a smile on his face. As soon as Lu Zhongguang returned to his room and closed the door next to Chu Ping'er's quietly opened. Chu Ping'er sighed. Just as she was about to close the door, Yu Qianqiu stood in front of her with a smile. Chu Ping'er's eyes lit up. Before she could react, Yu Qianqiu had already squeezed in. In the process, he smelled a faint fragrance. He couldn't help but take a deep breath. Based on his experience from his previous life, Chu Ping'er was still a virgin. "Marshal Uncle Yu." Chu Ping'er closed the door and locked it. She held back her surprise and greeted. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said with a smile, "No need to be so polite. We haven't seen each other for a long time." After saying that, he sat down. "Ever since we parted ways at the Spirit Stone Mine in Ongquangsung, it's been a year since I last saw you, Marshal Uncle." Chu Ping'er said faintly and sat opposite him. "Haha, we will naturally meet again if we are fated. Look, aren't we meeting each other now?" Yu Qianqiu laughed heartily. "I heard that Marshal Uncle was killed by the Devil Dao in the Spirit Stone Mine. The whole of Ongquangsung thought that you were really dead. I didn't expect to meet Marshal Uncle here." "That's right. Since Marshal Uncle is fine, why didn't you return to Ongquangsung?" Since Chu Ping'er had doubts in her heart, she naturally had to ask. As she spoke, she got a clean cup, poured some tea, and placed it on the opposite side. "Fortunately, I am lucky. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to see you again." Shaking his head and sighing, Yu Qianqiu drank the tea in one gulp. He said, "Answer Ongquangsung? Humph. If I had really returned to Ongquangsung, I'm afraid that not even my bones could be found. Do you think the sect master and Wu Baoru would let me go? Rather than losing my life, I would rather live a carefree life as a loose cultivator." Chu Ping'er thought that what he said was true. If she had stayed in Ongquangsung, she was afraid that she would not have had a good ending. After pouring another cup of tea for him, she slowly asked, "Marshal Uncle, how have you been wandering outside for more than a year?" So, I can be considered to be doing okay." Chu Ping'er looked at Yu Qianqiu. She didn't quite believe it. In the cultivation world, if a loose cultivator didn't have a high cultivation and didn't have the protection of a sect, how many of them could have a good life? He was still the same. He would bear all the pain alone. She just didn't know when she would be able to see him again after this. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but ask, "Marshal Uncle, are you really not going to return to Ongquangsung?" "I'm not going back, Yu Qianqiu suddenly asked. "You won't tell Ongquangsung that I'm still alive, will you?" Chu Ping'er was stunned. She felt as if her heart had been pierced by a needle. She then bit her lips and said slowly after a long time, "Is Chu Ping'er so untrustworthy in Marshal Uncle's eyes? Damn. This girl was stimulated. That's not right. Why does it feel a little weird? Could it be that this girl has fallen in love with me?" Thinking of this, he felt that his judgment was not wrong. He was ecstatic and secretly had a plan. He didn't dare to say anything to stimulate Chu Ping'er anymore. He quickly changed the topic and said, "Since I've left Ongquangsung, you don't need to call me Marshal Uncle anymore. Call me by my name from now on. Let's be friends. By the way, can I call you Ping'er from now on?" After that, he drank the tea in front of him. Ping'er. What an intimate name. With this sentence, the hidden bitterness on Chu Ping'er's face disappeared without a trace. She stared at Yu Qianqiu affectionately with her eyes and nodded. Then, he stood up and filled the teapot with water. Yu Qianqiu was now 100% sure that Chu Ping'er was really interested in him. He raised his hand and touched his nose. A trace of a smile flashed across his face. Suddenly, he reached out and grabbed the hand that was pouring the tea. He could clearly feel that the other party's hand was stiff, but she didn't pull it back. She still let him hold it. What was he trying to do? Chu Ping'er's face was red. Her heart couldn't help but beat wildly. She didn't dare to look at him directly. Chapter 40. Jie. Her little hands were so soft and smooth. Yu Qianqiu was very pleased with himself. He put down the teapot from her hands and said gently, "Ping'er, don't move. There's something in your hair. Let me help you remove it." As he spoke, he stood up and slowly pulled Chu Ping'er over. As Yu Qianqiu's hand reached out to her hair, a strand of grass appeared in her hair as if by magic. Yu Qianqiu gently plucked it and placed it in front of her eyes. He immediately let go of her hand. So there really was something in my hair. I thought. Chu Ping'er was secretly ashamed of herself for thinking in the wrong direction. Her face was so red that it couldn't get any redder. Who would have thought that Yu Qianqiu would slightly bend down and put his mouth next to her ear and softly say, "Ping'er, why is your body so fragrant?" Chu Ping'er's body trembled. Her delicate ear was disturbed by the hot breath coming from the man in front of her. She immediately felt unbearable. Especially when she smelled the man's body odor at such a close distance, her body felt a little weak. She wanted to step back, but her legs seemed to have no strength at all. She couldn't move at all. Her heart was beating so hard that even she could hear it. "Ping'er, you smell so good. I want to hug you. Can I?" Yu Qianqiu whispered softly in her ear. His lips were almost touching her bright red earlobe. Yu Qianqiu's words were like a devil's whisper. Chu Ping'er unexpectedly responded with an N. The first to strike has the upper hand. The last to strike will suffer. Little sister, big brother is coming. This thought flashed through Yu Qianqiu's mind. He was very proud of himself. The fairy sister that he had coveted for a long time was about to fall into his hands. This happiness came too suddenly and too unexpectedly. Even he didn't think it would happen. The hot breath from his mouth incessantly stimulated the other party's ears. His hands gently passed through the slender waist that was wrapped in silk and slowly hugged it. He slowly pulled it over and gradually hugged that curvy and fragrant body. When the two bodies were glued together, Chu Ping'er's eyes blurred as she let out a moan. How bouncy! Yu Qianqiu was stimulated. His mouth and hands started to get naughty. Chu Ping'er's body also twisted uneasily and hugged him. Feeling that Chu Ping'er was slowly responding, Yu Qianqiu also became aroused. He murmured, "Ping'er, I want you." He didn't know how to control his hands anymore. Ah! Chu Ping'er couldn't help but cry out in pain. He immediately woke up and pushed Yu Qianqiu's chest with both hands. He panted and said, "Qianqiu, we can't do this. We can't do this." "No. I want you right now," Yu Qianqiu said and wanted to stick to her again. Chu Ping'er used all her strength to resist and almost begged, "Qianqiu, I beg you, we really can't do it here. Senior Marshal brother Lu Zhengguang also lives here." Hearing Lu Zhengguang's name, Yu Qianqiu's head that was clouded by lust also woke up. Now was indeed not the time. Let's not talk about whether Chu Ping'er would agree or not. He had already made up his mind to steal Lu Zhengguang's treasure. He couldn't delay this matter. Thinking of this, he could only let go of Chu Ping'er helplessly. Chu Ping'er gently leaned on Yu Qianqiu's body. Her face was still red, as if she was happy that Qianqiu could listen to her. She listened to his strong heartbeat and said slowly, "Qianqiu, don't worry. Ping'er's body will only belong to you in this lifetime. Next time. Ping'er will definitely give it to you next time." Yu Qianqiu hugged her and responded helplessly. However, his hands were still taking advantage of her body. Not long after, Chu Ping'er let out a soft moan. She was a little aroused by his restless hands again. She quickly grabbed his hand and held it in her own. She snuggled in his arms and asked softly, "Qianqiu, do you think I'm a little frivolous for agreeing so quickly?" "No, I like it." After Yu Qianqiu finished speaking, he sat on the stool and pulled Chu Ping'er over to sit on his lap. "Then do you like me?"
Chu Ping'er turned her head and looked at him.
Silly. Needless to say, of course I do.
Then when did you start to like me?
Today? Chu Ping'er asked without blinking. No. Since the first day I came to this world, I like you. I often dream of you. Chu Ping'er clenched her fist and hit him.
She said coquettishly, "You're so annoying."
I'm happy that you lied to me. I want to hear the truth. You really want to hear it?
Yes.
Yu Qianqiu saw that she didn't believe him even if he told the truth.
He could only say half the truth. AI.
Then I'll tell you the truth. Ever since I saw you naked in the forbidden pool of Ong Kwangtsung, I started to like you.
What?
Chu Ping'er exclaimed. Her half-lying body suddenly sat up. She couldn't believe that Yu Qianqiu really saw her naked. Anger gradually appeared on her face. She was cheated. Her chest rose and fell violently due to her rapid breathing. I love you, Yu Qianqiu said softly.
Whether it was the previous life or this life, these words were very lethal.
Chu Ping'er immediately fell into his arms.
He smiled and said, "Ping'er,
why are you so excited? I didn't mean to see it. I originally wanted to go to the stone cave in the forbidden area. Who knew that there would be a beautiful blue light sect female disciple who took off her clothes? AI. This must be heaven's will for us to be together." You're still talking. Chu Ping'er bashfully punched him again.
He had seen all the parts of her body that he shouldn't have seen. He had touched all the parts that he shouldn't have touched.
There was only one last step left. What else could she do now? This was fate. It's not like you'll lose a piece of meat just by looking. Yu Qianqiu laughed. Chu Ping'er immediately punched him 12 times. Yu Qianqiu laughed and grabbed her hand. He said, "All right, Ping'er, don't mess around. I have something serious to ask you."
Seeing that she finally became obedient, he asked again, "Ping'er, why did you follow Lu Zhongguang to the 100 Flowers Valley this time?"
Chu Ping'er pondered for a while and immediately told him everything that had happened, including the fact that Lu Zhongguang had the prescription. Yu Qianqiu listened carefully.
When he heard that Chu Ping'er clearly told him the content of the conversation between her and Lu Zhongguang in the room, he compared it with what he had overheard outside. He found that there was nothing to hide.
He immediately smiled with relief. Chapter 41. In fact, there were 2 reasons for his question just now. First, he wanted to know what Lu Zhongguang's jade butterfly formula looked like, so that he could avoid making a mistake. Secondly, he wanted to know if Chu Ping'er truly loved him wholeheartedly. If there was anything that she was deliberately hiding, if she was hiding something, Chu Ping'er would never expect Yu Qianqiu to treat her wholeheartedly. He was afraid that she would be thrown onto the bed, stripped naked, and raped on the spot. After that, he would abandon her and kill her. Yu Qianqiu would never be reluctant to part with her. It was not wrong to say that he was ruthless. Although he usually laughed and laughed, deep down, he was still the boss of the underworld in his previous life. Think about it. How many people could become the boss of the underworld from nothing? How many of them were good people? Chu Ping'er leaned against Yu Qianqiu, lying docilely in his arms. She probably never thought that she had just escaped from the gates of hell. Yu Qianqiu's joking face showed a rare gentle expression. His fingers gently stroked Chu Ping'er's beautiful hair. Ping'er.
Don't go back to Ong Kwangtsung.
Come with me. Now. Chu Ping'er paused and said, I also want to go with you, but how can I explain to my master? My master has always been very good to me. I'm afraid that he will be worried if I leave without a word. Your master is Lu Wanqian's disciple?
N.
I'm really worried about leaving you alone in Ong Kwangtsung. Moreover, Lu Zhongguang has ulterior motives towards you. Yu Qianqiu said worriedly. He.
Chu Ping'er turned around and looked at him with a smile.
What's wrong? Are you worried that I will be taken advantage of by Lu Zhongguang? Yu Qianqiu said solemnly. I'm not worried, I'm very worried. Both the grandfather and grandson of the Lu family are nothing good, and Ong Kwangtsung and that bunch of bullshit elders are all beasts in human clothing. I know that better than you do. You're just a little disciple of Ong Kwangtsung. How could you possibly defeat them?
Although his words were not very pleasant to hear, Chu Ping'er knew that he was really worried about her. After a sweet smile, she said to him solemnly, Master has been very kind to me.
I am an orphan. When I was very young, Master brought me up the mountain to cultivate. She has always treated me like her own daughter. Among all the female disciples, Master treats me the best. If I leave without saying anything, not only will Master worry, I will also feel very guilty. Is your master a man or a woman? Yu Qianqiu suddenly asked in an untimely manner. Woman, why are you asking this? Chu Ping'er asked curiously. Then I'm relieved. Chu Ping'er was stunned for a moment, but she immediately reacted.
She punched him again and said, "Why is your head filled with all these messed up things?"
Yu Qianqiu laughed. In fact, he really wanted to say, "You're too pure."
It was no wonder that he would have such a thought.
In his previous life, he had been through a lot of dirty things. He had seen too many dark things. When he looked at things, it was inevitable that he would consider more negative things. He belonged to the kind of person who was more suspicious and didn't trust others easily. Sigh. Looks like I can't persuade you. Yu Qianqiu sighed softly and suddenly hugged Chu Ping'er. Ah! What are you doing? Chu Ping'er cried out in surprise and joy. Yu Qianqiu smiled calmly and said, "Do you trust me?" Chu Ping'er was as happy as a cat in Yu Qianqiu's arms and nodded. Yu Qianqiu was moved.
He lowered his head and kissed her forehead lightly. Then he said, "Ping'er, listen to me.
Remember what I said. I agree to let you go back to Kwangtsung. It's not that I don't want you to stay. I really want you to stay, but I don't want you to be in a difficult position. If I see you in a difficult position, I will feel even worse than you. Do you understand? After you go back to Kwangtsung, you must remember to protect yourself at all costs. As long as you still have me in your heart, treat it as protecting yourself for me. You must make yourself well. Ping'er. Remember, no matter what happens in the future, I will definitely find you. Even if I die, my soul will find you and let you know that I'm here. I don't want you to die." Chu Ping'er immediately covered his mouth and said with tears, "I want you to come back to me alive. I will definitely live well and wait for you to come back to me." Yu Qianqiu smiled gently and said, "As long as you can do it, I will definitely do it. No one can stop me. Ping'er, you have to remember, our separation today is for a better reunion in the future." NNN. Chu Ping'er nodded desperately with tears in her eyes. Seeing that she was crying, Yu Qianqiu wanted to ease the atmosphere.
He put her down and said, "I have something to ask of you."
Ping'er, will you agree?
NN.
Chu Ping'er said with tears in her eyes, "As long as I can do it, I will agree to anything." Yu Qianqiu said disapprovingly, "This is something that you can do easily. I'm just afraid that you will not agree to it when the time comes." "Do you not trust me that much?" Chu Ping'er was a little angry, but she suddenly saw Yu Qianqiu's face revealing a trace of a strange smile.
She couldn't help being startled and said with slight apprehension, "Don't tell me you want me to do that thing with you again?"
"I already said that it's not convenient for Lu Zhongguang to live here." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He immediately understood what she was talking about. He secretly thought that this girl's awareness was too high.
He couldn't help but smile bitterly and said, "Am I such a lowly person?"
Chu Ping'er was so embarrassed that her face turned red.
She stamped her feet and said, "If it's not that thing, then say it."
"I will agree to it, okay? This is what you said, you can't go back on your words." Yu Qianqiu put his mouth next to her ear and said softly, "My hand is a little itchy."
As he said that, his hand had already slid down the smooth skin of a certain someone's collar.
Chu Ping'er's body trembled, but she didn't resist.
She only heard her muttering, "You still say that you're not a lowly person, but I've never seen someone more."
Gradually, an uncontrollable moan came out of her mouth. Yu Qianqiu, who had succeeded in his plot, happily pulled out his hand and put it in front of his nose to smell it.
He said, "It smells so good."
Chu Ping'er was so embarrassed that she almost couldn't lift her face. "Wait for me, I will go out for a while and come back soon." Yu Qianqiu seemed to suddenly think of something. After saying that, he opened the door and went out, then closed the door. Chu Ping'er didn't know what he was going to do when he went out, so she hurriedly tidied up her collar that was loosened by that bad guy's hand. Yu Qianqiu came back very quickly. After he came in and closed the door, He took out a small exquisite bag and said with a smile, "I just bought it, it's for you." "Ah, it's a storage bag. What a beautiful storage bag. I have never used it before." Chu Pinger, who received the gift, was very happy. After playing with it for a while, she suddenly frowned and said, "This thing is very expensive. It must be hard for you to be alone outside. Why do you need to spend this money?" "Hee hee. As long as you like it, spending a little money is nothing. Your husband doesn't have anything else but money. In the storage bag, I have 100 high-grade spirit stones, 1,000 mid-grade spirit stones, and 10,000 low-grade spirit stones. You can keep it on you, in case you need it when I am not here," Yu Qianqiu said with a smile. Chapter 42. The items in the storage pouch were just as Yu Qianqiu had said. Chu Pinger, who had used her divine sense to check, was shocked. She asked doubtfully, "Where did you get so many spirit stones?" Yu Qianqiu smiled and didn't answer her directly. He just hugged her and said, "Take good care of yourself." Then he turned around and walked out.
Chu Ping reluctantly shouted, "I'll wait for you."
Yu Qianqiu didn't tell her that he was living next door. He didn't go back to his room either. He went straight to Guan Yu's room and pushed the door open. Guan Yu had returned and was fiddling with a lot of things on the table. When he saw Yu Qianqiu, he nodded with a smile. It was a good feeling to have money to spend. "Why do you have a woman's fragrance?" Guan Yu's nose flared as he sniffed Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu was worried and impatiently asked, "How long will it take to get to supporting Immortal Island from here? I want to go there as soon as possible." Guan Yu was startled and his expression sank. Yu Qianqiu would naturally use the supporting immortal token to go to supporting Immortal Island. Once he used it, he would never have the chance to go back.
However, his natal primordial spirit was in the hands of others.
What could he do? He sighed and said, "There's a shop on supporting Immortal Island in the 100 Flowers Valley. They use flying artifacts to transport things every day. If you show the supporting immortal token to the shopkeeper, they will naturally take you there." Yu Qianqiu pondered for a bit and had a plan. He patted Guan Yu's shoulder and sent him into his space without caring if he was happy or not. He also swept the things on the table into his space.
Then, a long and thin pipe appeared in his hand.
This was something he had bought outside. Today, when he was strolling in the market, a man suddenly pulled him to the side and asked if he wanted anything good. Yu Qianqiu asked him what it was, and the man pulled him to the side, took out the thing, and told him that it was called Fallen Immortal, and it was specially made to deal with cultivators. To put it bluntly, it was a sleeping gas specially made for cultivators. It was very effective against cultivators below the core formation stage. Yu Qianqiu was overjoyed. The two of them immediately ran into the wilderness and caught a few wild beasts to experiment. Sure enough, the effect was miraculous. Yu Qianqiu was so happy that he exclaimed that the man was a talent. In the end, he accidentally put the man into his own space. The two ends of the pipe had small holes sealed with wax, and there was a fuse halfway up the waist. Yu Qianqiu took out a flint and lit the fuse. The fuse dragged sparks as it drilled into the pipe.
Then, the pipe made a light pop sound and he felt a slight warmth in his hand.
Yu Qianqiu nodded with satisfaction. He took it to the corridor and looked around to see that there was no one around. Then, he gently touched the door of Lu Zhongguang's room and listened carefully to see if there was any movement inside. He unscrewed the wax seal on the two ends of the pipe and gently inserted one end into the crack of the door. He put the other end in his mouth and gently blew. Inside the room, Lu Zhongguang was sitting cross-legged in meditation. With his cultivation, he had actually heard a little movement outside the door. He concentrated and didn't find anyone, so he didn't care.
This was mainly because he was arrogant and had never suffered a loss in the cultivation world. Moreover, he had never heard of anyone from the righteous and devil Dao daring to cause trouble in the 100 Flowers Valley. A wisp of green smoke slowly floated out from the crack of the door and gradually filled the whole room. Sitting cross-legged, Lu Zhongguang's nose slightly moved and he secretly wondered what was so fragrant. Then, he felt that the genuine qi in his body became heavy and slowed down. He frowned and opened his eyes to see the room filled with green smoke.
Even though Lu Zhongguang didn't have any experience at this time, he also found that he had been tricked. He was shocked and just got up from the bed. He suddenly felt dizzy.
He opened his mouth to shout, but before he could shout, his eyes suddenly went black and he fell to the ground with a bang.
Yu Qianqiu had been guarding outside. He was not worried at all. Anyway, if he was discovered, he could hide in the golden bead.
Hearing the sound of someone falling to the ground inside, he secretly said that he had succeeded. He put his palm on the door and exerted a little force.
The bolt inside popped open. With his current level of cultivation, opening a door was a piece of cake. Moreover, in the cultivation world, this kind of door was just for show. Even if the door was bolted like this, it wouldn't be able to stop anyone. Only the sound of the bolt opening could alert the person inside. However, the person inside had already fainted. Pushing the door open, Yu Qianqiu quickly went inside. When he saw Lu Zhengguang lying on the ground, he closed the door again. He walked straight over and without saying a word, lifted his leg and kicked the person lying on the ground. Feeling his unvented fire, he kicked a few more times, cursing as he kicked. "How dare you flirt with my girl? You're courting death." After feeling a little better, he took off the storage pouch on Lu Zhengguang's waist and opened it. He released his divine sense to investigate. Sure enough, he found a jade archive that was exactly the same as the one Chu Ping'er had described. When he used his divine sense to investigate the jade archive, he found that the layers of restrictions inside were completely undetectable. Only the first layer was unlocked. He reckoned that it was the layer that Lu Chongqing had unlocked. There was a whole bunch of strange medicinal names. Yu Qianqiu had never heard of any of them before. He couldn't tell whether the jade archive was real or fake. After storing the storage pouch into his dimensional space, he immediately searched around the room. He didn't even let go of the bedding on the bed. After confirming that there was nothing else hidden, he stripped off Lu Zhengguang's clothes and carefully examined them piece by piece. However, he didn't find anything. This guy has soft skin and tender flesh. No wonder he dared to seduce my girl, Yu Qianqiu muttered as he looked at the naked Lu Zhengguang on the ground. If it weren't for the fact that he was afraid of bringing trouble to Chu Ping'er, he would have killed Lu Zhengguang right there and then. However, he was unwilling to do so. His gaze fell on Lu Zhengguang's genitals. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his nose and sneered. He glanced at the sword hanging by the bed and walked over to pull it out. He circled around the naked man on the ground and swung the sword in his hand at the genitals of Lu Zhengguang's thighs. Blood splattered everywhere. I really don't trust this kind of person. I had no choice but to castrate him, Yu Qianqiu sighed. When he mentioned Chu Ping'er, his brows furrowed again. Lu Zhengguang had only told Chu Ping'er about the pill formula. Now that it had been stolen and he had been castrated, the first person the Lu family's grandfather and grandson would suspect would be Chu Ping'er. This wouldn't do. Looking at Lu Zhengguang's lower body bleeding all over the ground, Yu Qianqiu's tightly furrowed brows relaxed. He smiled lightly and took a brush from the brush rack on the side. He dipped it in the blood on the ground and scribbled a few lines of words on the wall. Lu Chongqing, I will take revenge for the extermination of my family in the future. I met your grandson by chance, so I will collect some interest first. After doing this, Yu Qianqiu walked out unhurriedly and closed the door. When he passed by Chu Ping'er's room, he resisted the urge to go in again. He walked out of the 100 Flowers house and went straight to the shops around the square. He had seen the shops of Fuxian Island when he was strolling around during the day, so he naturally had to go there now. When he walked into the market, he thought about how he didn't know when he would be able to come back again, so he looked at the items on the stalls as he walked. As long as he found something useful, he directly bought it and threw it into his storage bag. He didn't even care about the price. Chapter 43. Taoist Friend. What do you want to buy? Our shop's magic tools and pills are famous in the cultivation world. Let me take a look first. Yu Qianqiu looked at the items on the shelves. Just as the shopkeeper said, Fuxian Island's shop should mainly sell magic tools and pills. After looking for a while, Yu Qianqiu asked the shopkeeper, "Shopkeeper, are you in charge of this shop?" The shopkeeper was stunned and didn't know why he asked that. He smiled and said, "My sex elder is in charge here, but I can still make the decisions." Taoist friend, what do you want to buy? Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, "I want to see your elder." Seeing that the shopkeeper was still hesitating, he added, "I have something important to see your elder."
While the shopkeeper was still muttering, a young man and woman with extraordinary looks came out of the house. Behind them was an old man. The shopkeeper smiled and greeted, "Young palace master, young lady." The young man and woman nodded. "Which family's young palace master and young lady are they?" Yu Qianqiu looked at the young man and woman. The young man had an extraordinary presence and the young lady was very beautiful, not inferior to Chu Ping. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but take a few more glances. The young man and woman glanced at Yu Qianqiu and didn't mind. Yu Qianqiu's appearance really didn't attract much attention. The young man and woman walked to the door and bowed to the old man behind them. "Martial uncle, please stay." The old man nodded and said, "Go back and send my regards to your mother." The young man and woman said a few polite words and turned to leave. The old man also turned and walked into the house.
"Elder Qin."
The shopkeeper shouted and walked to the old man. He said respectfully, "Elder, this Taoist friend said he has something important to talk to you about."
He pointed at Yu Qianqiu. The old man turned around to look at Yu Qianqiu.
He sized him up and asked in confusion, "Is there something you need from me, little brother?"
Yu Qianqiu didn't dare to put on any airs now. He hurriedly bowed and imitated the shopkeeper's greeting, "Elder Qin." He then took out the immortal supporting token from his storage bag and handed it over. When Elder Qin saw what Yu Qianqiu took out, his eyelids twitched. He took it and examined it.
He knew it was real and immediately said, "Come with me."
Yu Qianqiu respectfully followed him into the inner room. The shopkeeper also saw that item. As he looked at the two of them, he muttered, "Is that an immortal supporting token? It's been a long time since I've heard of an outsider holding this thing." At daybreak, Yu Qianqiu followed a person out of the 100 Flowers Valley. This person was Elder Qin's disciple. His name was Cheng Gengqing. He was in charge of transporting things between supporting Immortal Island and the 100 Flowers Valley. Today, he was ordered by his master to bring Yu Qianqiu back to supporting Immortal Island. The two of them walked out of the 100 Flowers Valley's grand formation. Cheng Gengqing took out a small copper crane and threw it into the air after making a few hand seals. The copper crane grew with the wind and instantly turned into a big, lively immortal crane. It circled in the sky and slowly landed in front of the two of them. Cheng Gengqing jumped onto the crane's back and looked at Yu Qianqiu.
He smiled and said, "Come on up."
Yu Qianqiu immediately jumped on.
The former made a hand seal and shouted, "Rise!"
The big crane cried and flew into the sky. Yu Qianqiu wasn't paying attention and was almost thrown down. The crane circled twice and found the right direction to fly south. The speed of the crane was very fast. When people stood on it, the wind resistance was very strong. It almost blew them off. However, no matter how bad Yu Qianqiu's cultivation was, he could still stand steadily when he circulated his power. Cheng Gengqing saw Yu Qianqiu's embarrassment and couldn't help but smile. He asked, "Is this your first time riding a flying magic tool?" "Yes, I've never ridden it before." Yu Qianqiu didn't know how to address him, so he could only answer directly. Cheng Gengqing seemed to know what he was thinking and said, "Since you came with the supporting immortal token, you will be a disciple of the same sect in the future. Our supporting Immortal Island isn't like other sects where there are generations of disciples. Seniority is determined by strength. Qi refining cultivators call foundation establishment cultivators martial uncles, and so on. I'm a core formation cultivator, but I can't see through your cultivation. I wonder what stage your cultivation is at? Why didn't this damn Guan Yu tell me before?" Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly. "I'm Qi refining level 10, so I have to call you Martial Ancestor Cheng." He didn't expect that his seniority in Kwangtsung was so high, but now he was someone else's disciple. "You don't have to be embarrassed. This is a very normal thing in our supporting Immortal Island. Maybe I'm your martial ancestor today, but in 2 years, I might have to call you Martial Uncle." Cheng Gengqing smiled. Martial Ancestor Cheng must be joking. How is that possible? Yu Qianqiu replied. Cheng Gengqing was also a person who was easy to talk to. The two of them chatted and laughed along the way. In his previous life, Yu Qianqiu took a plane and flew in the sky. However, anyone with a normal body could sit on a plane. People who didn't cultivate really couldn't sit on a plane. If you didn't sit in the cabin, you would know what it felt like to stand outside the plane. However, there were benefits too. The great rivers and mountains below could be seen clearly from the top. After flying for more than half a day, they couldn't see the land below. It was all vast ocean. Yu Qianqiu knew that they were about to reach supporting Immortal Island. As expected, not long later, an island appeared on the surface of the ocean. The island was surrounded by clouds and mist. Cheng Gongqing smiled. Supporting Immortal Island is in front. When they flew closer, they realized that it looked like a small island from afar. However, when they looked closer, they couldn't tell how big it was. The red-crowned crane descended and its speed slowed down. When it was about to land, Cheng Gongqing sent out a finger seal from the depths of the clouds. The clouds opened up a path for the red-crowned crane to carry the two of them in. After passing through the clouds, Yu Qianqiu looked back. He couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. From the outside, it looked like there were clouds, but from the inside, there was nothing. It seemed like this was a formation to protect the island. Looking down, the pavilions and terraces really gave off the feeling of a paradise on earth. As expected of the number one sect of the righteous path. The grandeur of these buildings was much stronger than that of Ong Kwang-tsung. The red-crowned crane landed on a plaza. The two of them jumped down. Cheng Gongqing invoked his arts to keep the red-crowned crane. He said, "Follow me." After saying that, he led Yu Qianqiu to the huge building in front of the plaza. Along the way, they met many people who greeted Cheng Gongqing. Yu Qianqiu saw a huge building with 3 floors from afar. On the board of the first floor, there were 3 golden words, Peng Lai Pavilion. After Cheng Gongqing spoke to the guard at the door, he brought him into the building. Once he entered, Yu Qianqiu almost fainted. It was like entering a government office building in his previous life. Even though it was an ancient building, there was an empty main hall in the middle of the first floor. On both sides, there were many smaller halls. The smaller halls also had small signs hanging on them. For example, the service office, the defense office, the secular affairs office, the miscellaneous office. The signs in the corridors on both sides were unclear. He didn't know what was written on them, but it must be somewhere else. Yu Qianqiu shook his head. If it wasn't for this antique building, he would really suspect that he had traveled back in time. He followed Cheng Gongqing to the top floor of the 3rd floor and stopped in front of what seemed to be the largest room. Cheng Gongqing shouted from outside, "Disciple Cheng Gongqing requests an audience with the sect master." Yu Qianqiu raised his head and looked at the sign hanging above. Sure enough, it was the word, Sect Master. He really suspected that the guy who made these things was also a time traveler. "Come in." A majestic voice came from inside. This feeling was too *king familiar. Yu Qianqiu felt his teeth aching. He secretly muttered, "I wonder what rank the sect master is. Governor? Mayor? Or county head?" Cheng Gongqing pulled him, who was in a daze. Chapter 44. The sect master of the supporting Immortal Island, Feng Xiongtian, had already reached the middle stage of the tribulation. He had been in charge of the righteous Tao's number 1 sect, the supporting Immortal Island, for more than 100 years. At this moment, he was sitting upright in the sect master's room on the top floor of Peng Lai Pavilion. Accompanying him were a few elders of supporting Immortal Island. The few of them were quite worried about the current situation of the cultivation world. Ong Kwang-tsung had consecutively eradicated several demonic sects within a year, completely breaking the balance between the righteous and demonic sects that had been maintained for hundreds of years. His strong rise had stirred up the entire cultivation world into a state of unrest. Some of the weaker righteous sects had been repeatedly attacked by the demonic sects, and more people from the righteous and demonic sects were involved. It seems that chaos in the correction world is unavoidable. Although my supporting Immortal Island is the number 1 sect of the righteous Tao, I'm afraid that we will also be implicated. We need to prepare early. Elder Fei, Elder Guan and Elder Huang, the 3 of you are in charge of the 10,000 Fragrance Garden, the Alchemy Pavilion, and the Smithing Pavilion. It is very important for our sect to deal with this calamity. All kinds of elixirs and magic tools must be prepared. Once the chaos implicates our supporting Immortal Island, we must not tarnish our reputation as the number 1 sect of the righteous path. I reckon that after the chaos, the entire cultivation world will be ranked again according to strength. Our sect's reputation as the #1 sect of the righteous path has been maintained for more than 1,000 years. We will not allow it to be destroyed in our generation. Feng Xiongtian had a dignified appearance to begin with.
When he spoke, his eyes shone brightly as he glanced at the 3 elders. "We will do our best,"
the 3 elders said in unison. However, when Elder Fei, who was in charge of the myriad fragrance garden, said this, she seemed to lack confidence. Feng Xiongtian looked at him and asked, "Elder Fei, do you have any difficulties? If there is, then don't say it now. This matter concerns the rise and fall of the sect, and we absolutely cannot be careless. Otherwise, if anything goes wrong, we will become the eternal sinners of the sect."
Elder Fei looked at the 2 elders beside him and said with a bitter smile, "There are indeed difficulties."
It was true that the 10,000 fragrance garden was the largest spiritual herb garden in the world, but there weren't many spiritual herbs that could be used to refine high-quality pills. Not only did good spiritual herbs grow slowly, but it was also harder for them to survive. Once Elder Guan's alchemy pavilion increases its consumption, I'm afraid that it will really not be able to make ends meet.
As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Guan, who reeked of medicine, stood up and shouted, "Fei, what do you mean by that?
Could it be that you want my alchemy pavilion to reduce the amount of spirit grass used? Don't even think about it." Elder Fei did not get angry even after being rebutted by Elder Guan. He only smiled bitterly and shook his head. Elder Guan's temper was famous in supporting Immortal Island. He didn't care about anything else and only liked to concoct pills. If someone dared to obstruct him from concocting pills, he would fight them to the death. There was no one in supporting Immortal Island who wasn't afraid of him. In the entire cultivation world, he had the title of Pill Fanatic. His alchemy skills were probably second to none. Elder Fei, who knew his temper well, did not dare to say anything else. "How about this?" Feng Xiongtian said, "Send more disciples to search for spiritual herbs. Send more people to the myriad fragrance garden as well to increase the production of spiritual herbs. The sect will stop selling elixirs that are intermediate grade and above. First, ensure the elixirs in the supporting Immortal Island's inventory. In addition, I have already notified Elder Quan, who is in charge of the sect's supplies, to increase the amount of spirit stones used by all disciples below the core formation stage by 5 times, and the amount of chi storage pills used by all disciples above the core formation stage by 1 time. Elder Jean, who is in charge of the spirit stone mine, will increase the amount of spirit stones extracted. Elder Qin, who is in charge of the common goods, will send back the spirit stones obtained from the outside." The elders nodded. At this moment, they heard the sound of 2 people coming up the stairs. Someone shouted from outside, "Disciple Cheng Gongqing is here to see the sect leader." Everyone had an impression of Cheng Gongqing. He was the capable disciple of Elder Qin, who was in charge of the common goods. However, they did not know why he came to see the sect leader. Did something happen outside?
Feng Xiongtian frowned and shouted, "Come in."
They saw Cheng Gongqing leading an ordinary-looking man in. The sect leader and the 3 elders looked at him. From his clothes, they could tell that he wasn't a disciple of supporting Immortal Island. What was even stranger was that they couldn't see any cultivation from him. This person was, of course, Yu Qianqiu. Disciple Cheng Gongqing greets the sect leader and the 3 elders. Cheng Gongqing bowed. Yu Qianqiu also bowed. Itinerant cultivator Yu Qianqiu greets the sect leader and the 3 elders. "Cheng Gongqing, why are you looking for me?" Feng Xiongtian said, but his eyes were still sizing up Yu Qianqiu. When he heard Yu Qianqiu say that he was a rogue cultivator, he almost thought that he was mistaken. The other 3 elders also showed the same doubts. Cheng Gongqing reached out to touch the storage bag hanging on his waist and said respectfully, "Reporting to Sect Master, Disciple is bringing the spirit stones back to the island, and I was ordered by Master to bring Yu Qianqiu to see Sect Master." "Your master asked you to bring him?" Feng Xiongtian asked curiously. Cheng Gongqing quickly took out the supporting immortal token and told them the purpose of Yu Qianqiu's visit. After listening to him, Feng Xiongtian and the 3 elders looked at each other in dismay. The supporting immortal token was a token that could only be obtained by those who held the position of an elder and above. It was used to show one's identity and to give the descendants of the token a chance to join the island. This rule had been established for thousands of years and Yu Qianqiu was the 3rd person to come with the token. There were originally 300 special tokens on the island. It was said that one would know a secret if they collected all 300 tokens. No one knew what the secret was, but it became a symbol of identity for those who held the position of an elder and above. As time passed, they were distributed one by one. Due to various reasons, there were less than half of the tokens left on the supporting immortal island. That was where the trouble came. Some people, be it in terms of cultivation, qualifications, or contributions, were qualified to assume the position of an elder. However, after assuming the position of an elder, they didn't have a token that represented their status as an elder. Originally, the rule was that only the descendants of the token holders could join the supporting immortal island. Later on, because the number of tokens had dwindled, it was changed to only recognizing the token holders and not the descendants. They were hoping that someone would give the token to them. Now that Yu Qianqiu had brought this token, it would undoubtedly reduce the awkward situation of an elder being in an unjustifiable position. Feng Xiangtian took the token from Chen Gongqing's hand, and after checking it carefully, he nodded slightly at the three elders to show that it was the real supporting immortal token. The three elders couldn't hide their fiery gazes. The three of them were the ones who held the position of an elder, but didn't have a token. Actually, it wasn't just the three of them who didn't have a token. When Feng Xiangtian saw the expressions of the three elders, his heart skipped a beat and he had a headache. This wasn't good, as something like this hadn't happened for hundreds of years. This token had to appear when he was in charge of the supporting immortal island. The entire supporting immortal island had over 200 elders, and there were over 50 elders who didn't have a token. If this token was given to any elder, it would definitely offend the other 50 elders and he would have to suffer in the future. Don't think that this was just a small supporting immortal token. It might cause a huge commotion. To put it bluntly, it might even cause him to be kicked out of his position. That would be the first time in the history of the supporting immortal island to be kicked out of his position due to unfairness. Brother, what are you trying to do? Aren't you harming others by bringing this thing here? Thinking about this, Feng Xiangtian looked at Yu Qianqiu and didn't know what to say. Yu Qianqiu didn't know how much trouble he had brought to the #1 sect master of the righteous path. When he saw Feng Xiangtian looking at him with malicious intent, his heart skipped a beat and he thought to himself, "Damn! Is this old fart going back on his words?" You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.